let y'all have this all worked out.
Well, they didn't tell you that we've pretty much got it all worked out?
Oh,
All you have to do is say yes at the right time and it's a done deal.
all right.
Okay. Yeah, I can, are you ready? Everything's on and ready.
Close enough. Just getting ready to ask the commissioners if they're ready, and I'll do that right now. It's about 30 seconds to 2. Our meeting is scheduled for 2, so is everyone ready? 3, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Didn't get off to a very good start, did I? 3, it's about, thank you, Commissioner Mendenhall. It's 3 o'clock, so if everyone's ready, we'll go ahead and get started. And would like to ask Commissioner Yost if he will please to give our invocation.
Anyone that likes to join, please stand. Our Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you today and ask for your guidance and leadership in the county business. Let our words be words that are pleasing to you, and let our thoughts and minds come together to do what's right for our county and move our county forward. For us in these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Stir a pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. What's the pleasure of the board regarding our agenda?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Our agenda is approved. You know what else I forgot? To open the meeting? You're right, the gavel. So our agenda is approved. We have, well, one thing I'd like to do, and if others have anything they want to say right now, I'll certainly give you a chance to, but I'd like to welcome the people that are watching our live streaming. We do not have any in attendance here, in actual attendance for our meeting, but I'd like to welcome those who are watching us with the live streaming. And our next, anyone else have anything they'd like to say as we get started?
I have one comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I was just thinking I've got certain dates this month that I'm committed, and probably the other board members do too, that I cannot change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would suggest maybe at the end of the meeting that we look at the rest of the month and see what everybody's dates are that they can and can't meet, and maybe lock in a few more,
Okay.
or block a few more dates.
All right, we'll do it this way. If there's no objection, we'll add that as an item at the end of our agenda. I know we've already approved the agenda, but with the concurrence of the board, we'll honor Commissioner Morris's request. Make that item 5, and item 6 will be adjournment. So without objection, we'll add that as item 5 to our agenda. Hearing no objection, Madam Clerk, that becomes item 5. Okay? I want to, Will's here and he has some information to share with us, but I want to explain something. Just to refresh our memory, I asked Shannon to provide each commissioner with a copy of our priorities for the upcoming budget that we established during our goals session. And I know I found it helpful to go back and look at my comments when we get to actually discussing this at some point, which probably would be item 3, and this is really just open discussion for the commissioners as well regarding budget items, that's available for you. The other handout is the proposed budget 2019-20 approval process. And this is information that our county manager and our finance director and assistant county manager have shared with us. And it's kind of like, I guess I might say, some loose ends that they just want to be sure are tied up as far as how we're dealing with the budget. And that would be, that's what we mean by item 4. We will cover that at this time, as well as have further discussion about the budget dialogue. Now, here's what I'd like to do, folks, if this is okay with you. I'd like to, when we get to the discussion part of our agenda, I'd like to just have open discussion with a few guidelines. One is we don't talk over each other. We wait our turn. If a commissioner is talking, it's assumed they have the floor. So remind me if I violate this, not to do it. But let's not talk over each other. The other thing is, if anyone wants the floor, I'm not asking that you come through the chair at that particular part of the meeting. Just feel free in a courteous and respectful way to go ahead and make your comments. If 2 people want the floor at about the same time, and I'll pick one or the other. One can go and then the other. Would that be okay with the commissioners to have sort of a free-flowing style like that? And, okay, and that's what we'll do. Next item is department head review. We originally had planned for Eddie McGee to be here as well. I understand he has some health issues, or a health issue. And
Surgery yesterday.
and because of that, it is unable to be here with us today. So let's go ahead and clear this up if we may, please. What's the pleasure of the board? Do you want Eddie to come to a future meeting, or what is your pleasure?
I'd like for him to.
Okay? Anyone else? Mr. Mendenhall, Jans?
I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean,
Yeah, okay, Commissioner Mendenhall, if you're on board, I'm on board. We'll just plan for him to be at one of our future meetings.
I didn't want to plan for
When he
him because
recovers.
he'll be out for just a little bit, so.
Yeah, okay. So, Madam Clerk, if you will, please, when it's the right time, or when you feel like it's appropriate, go ahead and notify. We'd like for him to be at a future meeting.
I will.
All right, Will, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Go for it. Floor is yours.
I thought you were asking the questions.
I might have. But as far as Commissioner Mendenhall, you might not have saw it, but he gave me a little nod like that.
You got this paper in front of you, I'm sure, and hopefully look through it.
Let's see, what do you have, Will?
His budget. Page 14 in the budget.
Oh, okay, page 14 in the budget. Okay.
Was there any particular thing that you had a question on, about it, or?
Well, each commissioner is welcome to share their response. Now, what I would probably be most comfortable with is you go ahead and you sort of speak to any part of the budget you feel like you need to. And if it's all right with you, if it's okay with you, as you go through your part, if a commissioner has a question, we can deal with it at that time.
Yes, sir.
I would just start with the
Professionals.
being asked for as far as like the 500,000.
Yeah, that's
what you're thinking of.
Yeah,
that.
that's the one that's, I guess, different, is the 500,000
Oh, yeah.
that I'm asking for.
That's in capital reserve.
Okay, where are we specifically, please?
Capital reserve is on page, bear with me a second. I think it's page 82.
82?
Yeah, 82.
Okay,
The $500,000 for economic development projects being transferred into capital reserve.
I was requesting the board to consider setting that money aside. And then we could, excuse me, we would have that money there. It's not giving it to me, it's just setting it aside. And as y'all choose, would have that money laying there for matching grants, land purchases, doing studies. We could use it for several things like that, incentives to companies. We could use it to improve the infrastructure around the county. If we had, obviously that amount of money won't do a lot of infrastructure, but it would run a water line to somebody if they were bringing in a business, and that would help get the business here. But none of that money is for me to just spend. It's just set aside so that if I come to the board and request something, that the money's already set there, and we don't have to worry about trying to find the money, but then y'all would have to approve how it is spent.
okay.
Well,
Anyone?
I'll
Yes.
start out. You've got some different items here as far as, it says economic development projects, which indicates more than one. And could you just, maybe go over the ones that you're thinking about? And I don't know if you have priority order or have prioritized them, or in your mind, do you have certain ones that are more important than the others? I'm just asking.
No, as far as this money's concerned, it would just be set aside, and as things arise, I would bring them to y'all in closed session, and we would discuss them, and y'all would vote on whether to do it or not. And we wouldn't have to do budget amendments and stuff, the money would just be sitting there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
For the budget amendment will have to be done to move from capital reserve to a line item to be spent in, but, yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be hunting the money, we would know it was laying there already.
Unless there's further questions, or comments, we'll go ahead with what you'd like to share with us, please.
Yeah, that obviously was the biggest change. Let's see, I'm just gonna go down this list here. I don't know what y'all are looking at versus what I'm looking at. We've got, go line item by line item if you want to. Is that what you want me to do? I thought I was just here to answer any questions you had after reading over it. I misunderstood.
Okay,
That's a good idea.
Go quicker that way. I knew y'all were trying to get things done.
so Commissioner Morris, you're comfortable with, giving the board just a little time to look over this a little more, and any questions or comments?
No, I have several questions, yeah.
Okay, feel free.
Okay, first of all, on the 500K, how did you derive that amount? How did you guys come up with that versus 400, 600, 300, 800?
There was no formula for that.
Okay,
It was just,
It was, we looked at what the county, I looked at what the county had put up on the existing sewer line. If you were thinking about doing any major project such as this, you would, such as maybe, for instance, adding water into Meadows area. After grants were received and other funding came in, Stokes County still put up like $400,000 of incentive money, or monies to make sure that this, grant was, this sewer line was established. So I looked at that, and then we looked at a lot of hookups per houses if you wanted to the cost of studies. And we looked at maybe if you've done a lot of studies in the Warren Cove area, in the Pinnacle area, in the King area, wherever area you would want to do a study for water or sewer in addition. We're looking anywhere from 25 to 35,000 a piece on that. So we estimated anywhere around, on 5 or 6 of those projects, we was looking at about 150,000 there total. If you happen to, you wanted to do them all or something and get the studies going to where you would have the information to where you was able to, start looking into, funding sources for them, because you would have the, information that you need
Okay.
to, apply for grants and things. So it was a few combination of things.
Okay, is this $500,000 only for economic development, or another department can use it if they have a project?
But now it's there, the commissioners can move it anytime they want to.
would have full control
Or any project.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, what was the intent? I mean, if it's in capital reserve, if we're gonna have to do a budget amendment, no matter who uses it. So my question was, why wasn't it put in economic development if that's where we're gonna use it?
Because they may not do it in 1920. It
Okay.
may be done in 2021 or,
So you just wanna
whatever.
hold it there? You
yeah,
still-
just holding it there.
Okay, that's fine, I don't have.
And I
a-
didn't know how else to word it, but say economic development projects.
Okay, that's no problem. I don't have any problem with holding it there, I was just wondering
Yeah.
what the thought process was. Okay, back to what Jake, you just said, most of these projects, if you're gonna do a water sewer project, it's gonna cost you 20% of it to skin in the game, basically. That's just kind of what the going percentage is, I think, these days. So, I can see using it for that. But to do that, we're gonna have to have a project that's, approved and well-defined and be in the grant application process. So, I mean, that's all well and good holding it there, but I think to do a water sewer project, we gotta re-engage the grant process like we did to get the sewer in there in the first place from here to Meadows. And that involves a whole lot of groundwork on you guys' part. I got 21 briefings, and I'll loan you any one of them that I put together to do the first go-around on that, so, if you want to use them, so. Okay, so that's good. On the 100,000 that's in your budget,
Yes,
for, professional services, is that money that will come back to the board through a budget amendment to be spent, or what's the planned expenditures for that, and is it something that you guys are already doing, or is it for
Yes, sir.
new expenditures, or what?
yes, sir. It was, let's see, increases include funding to continue efforts with consultants, that are helping us develop opportunities and identify necessary available properties and key factors to assist with the development, feasibility studies, cost analysis, and previous commitments. Some of those commitments were year-over-year commitments.
Okay, so will any of it come back through a budget amendment to a project, or is it just stuff that you need to cover your current and projected things you're gonna do this year?
Yes, sir.
That's what it is, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you came up with that number by looking at what you currently have going, plus possibility of doing some other things?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where would if we did a feasibility study for the wellness center, where would it come from? Would it come from this 100,000 maybe, or would it come from the
Yes,
500,000?
It'll come from wherever y'all tell me to get it.
I would think the 500,000.
Okay.
And that was, that's the worst for studies and.
Two feasibility studies,
Either one
60,000,
of them can be
and new
used for that.
construction, 22,000. I guess that's feasibility study, what I got wrote down on my thing.
Okay. I'm just curious, it went from 18,000 to 100,000, so
Yes.
I was curious what the thought process was. You have board reimbursement in there, $3,000. Is that for the board that used to exist, the Economic Development Board?
With the board's permission, I would like to next year, create an advisory board.
Okay.
To businessmen, just a few around the county,
Mhm.
and with the board's permission, obviously I'd like to feed them a sandwich or something when they come together with me. So
Okay.
I just needed a little bit of money and permission to do that. Yes.
Okay, I think that involves, you know, a question I'd asked you earlier, Will, about Economic Development Corporation and whether we should look at doing that
Yes, sir.
as well. Instead, you know, we had an advisory board, and I think there's mixed opinions on how successful that was, so, that probably need to be a regular agenda item to decide whether to do that or not.
Okay.
I would
Yeah,
think.
that would be up to y'all. I mean, obviously I talk to businessmen quite often, and I thought it would be neat to get 6 or 8 of them in a room from around the county and say, okay, fellas, where do y'all see us going? How do you see us getting there?
Mhm, okay.
Try to get advice from people that know and do.
Yeah, but it's gonna be a formal board, we need to address it that way, I think, in a formal
And
approval
it would
process.
depend on how you would want me to set it up. You know, I can do it just because they're friends of mine and they'll come and talk to me if I ask them to, you know. I just
Okay.
want-
Okay. I just wondered if it was just gonna be just like the board we had before, or why we had it in there since we don't have a board. That was currently have a board, so. We've got, Julia, is a capital projects fund, is that a new fund that we hadn't had before?
We've had it, but we haven't budgeted anything in it.
Did we ever budget while I was here or anything in it? I don't
One
remember.
thing, I think, one time, but it's been a long time ago. We still have to do a capital project ordinance, but that's
Yeah.
been those projects that we're looking at, doing down the road,
Okay,
if you want to approve them. But
Okay,
we will
there's-
still have to do a capital project ordinance once we get true figures.
okay, so there's no duplication in what public buildings projects are and what's in that capital project fund, right? Okay, good.
I took the larger projects and put them in capital projects, because we're gonna have to finance most of those.
Yeah, okay, good.
And took them out of public buildings.
Okay, okay, great. All right, that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chair.
So speaking of that, Julia, the reduction that you see in public buildings from 850 to 200, that's,
Oh, I'm sorry,
no,
sorry.
speaking of what you were just saying, because you shifted that, that's the reduction that we're seeing in the public buildings under the capital reserve fund from 850 down to 2.
That capital reserve fund for public buildings, that's for repairs, if the HVAC goes out, if there's a roof project we may need to do. We started putting like $125,000 to $200,000 in there to let it build up. See if something should break up the hospital HVAC, we'll have to replace it, because that is our facility. And we just been continuously putting that in there. Now, last year, they did put in there for paving up above what we recommended, so.
Okay.
Because like the roof on the jail that he's got in his budget, I'm taking it from capital reserve. To some other, the HVAC stuff that he's doing at this building, I'm taking from capital reserve instead of general fund.
And the
If you
benefit.
need to Go over that capital reserve fund, I will.
No, you don't have to go over the entire thing. I was just gonna ask, as far as transferring that 500,000 over, I mean, the benefit of that's just more of a seamless process for the
Correct.
entire
And
group.
then if
I mean,
something
that's-
comes up, the money's there for y'all to budget to do certain things,
Right,
instead of having to take it from fund balance, or it's sitting over there ready to be used for any project. That's what a capital reserve is for,
Right. I just wanna make sure that those monies are available if we,
Yeah,
you know, so choose to do this,
correct.
that it's available readily, so that if there's a grant opportunity or things like that, that's time sensitive, we can act on it pretty quickly,
Yeah.
so,
All that's in the budget amendment.
right, okay.
And we're kind of getting things in the process of moving forward with, say that Medicine Water plant,
Mhm.
for one time. I think this coming Tuesday, there's a meeting with USDA, Dr. Carswell,
To discuss the grant process for that.
to start to discuss hard for you to say, yes, you're interested in doing something, if we can't get you some factual numbers to provide.
Okay.
And what interest or borrowing or what kind of grant rates that we're looking at.
And those capital reserve funds roll forward every year. And I show the exact line item, the description of public works or economic development. Then I have a spreadsheet that I show that, like if it's, like the paving monies for public buildings that we reverted back, I will have a paving line on my spreadsheet showing that this amount's for that. And stuff like that. So I keep them a little bit more detailed, but you will approve a capital reserve resolution bringing those monies forward.
Okay.
Ready for Will to, give us his thoughts,
I've got a question, Commissioner Nicholson had messaged me, I guess he's watching from the hospital, he has a family illness today, so he wanted me to ask for him to Will, what his number one project that he sees that would be most beneficial, that you want done, your number one, if you had to choose one.
If I had to choose one right now, it would be water the meadows. And the councilman know why.
Shannon, while you're messaging him, ask him if he can, if our video and audio is coming across all right. If you would, please.
I also correspond with Diana in the beginning to make sure that we're sounding, and that's why I changed that mic, because I could hear the reverb from it, so I think
I
we're
could
good.
hear something, wasn't quite sure what it
That was
was.
those two mics together, yeah. I sure will. He said yes, I didn't even have to ask him, he or she.
Okay,
It appeared that
Yeah.
Jamie and Jake and I a little bit ago looking at it, there's about a 15-second delay in our actions.
oh,
Yeah.
could come in handy in certain situations.
Right. You got 15 seconds.
Yeah,
to blink it,
15
right?
seconds, yes. Any other questions or comments for Will before we,
Yeah, I'd
Let
like to
him
thank
have
y'all
some
for
more
working with
time.
me on the projects that I've come to you and y'all being so good to me and working with me on them. And we are moving the county forward and I'm proud of that. The Lord's blessing us.
so much potential in
Yes,
this
sir.
county.
Yes.
And we haven't always capitalized on it quite as well as we could have, or maybe even should have. But I think now we're starting to see more progress.
Well, thank you. Yes, sir. And obviously, y'all know one of the obstacles that we face is I can show a business owner the profitability of building something in the county, whatever it may be. But sometimes I have difficulty convincing them because it might be 3 times that amount in a heavier populated county, you know, and it's difficult to fight those challenges. And of course, you keep building those relationships and keep pestering them enough in a nice way, you know, eventually they'll come on, hopefully, so.
Called polite persistence.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. So, but I appreciate y'all backing me like you have, I really do.
Okay, Will, what have you have on your list that you haven't covered with us in some way? Is there anything?
The 500 was the big one that I felt like you would question. Just coming to answer any questions that y'all had, and thank you for, like I said, you know, always supporting me.
Okay.
Well, I do have a question on
Yes, sir.
infrastructure. I know that certain items have prohibited us from getting certain companies or businesses to be able to move in. It may be sewer here, it may be water here,
Yes, sir.
different places, different issues. Can you sort of summarize in maybe just a couple of minutes what parts of the county need what type of infrastructure to make it
very general,
Yeah,
so I don't
yeah,
say anything.
I'm not
that's-
asking for specific.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would like to see us as a county help King get the sewer plant up and running. I'd like to see us get sewer to Pinnacle. We have good water there, but we need sewer at Pinnacle. There's several places in the county that, have a lot of opportunity. In my opinion, Pine Hall area would make a good area for industry. It's, you know, 15 minutes or less from 220 and less than 30 minutes from the airport. Warren Cove has all kind of potential. They do have water and sewer already, though, thank goodness. The Germantown area has some tremendous traffic counts. If we can get sewer to the Germantown area. Just off the top of my head, those are some of the, everybody in the county kind of knows that, you know, it's not a secret, it's, but those are areas that I would like for y'all to, and we will talk about it whenever y'all are ready, you know, which area we pick and which one we go to accomplish that goal, and then once that one's done, we'll go to the next one and accomplish that goal, and continue to spread it around the county.
And I think you started out with the Meadows water, right?
Yes, sir. Right now, my top priority would be the Meadows water, and then, of course, and the high-speed internet. We've got to keep that, we've got to get that around the county. We've got to get internet access to this county. Very important.
You just touched on, one of my items, and that is high-speed, broadband access throughout the county. And River Street has made a valiant effort to be able to provide top-tier, high-speed internet access. Can't get much better with today's technology than fiber optic to residences. But it's taken a while for that to happen. I think they're building their base to, or they're creating their base to build on with King, Water Cove, get some cash flow going, and then at some point when it's time fits their business plan, they're going to start reaching out more into the county. But I think I heard Commissioner Morris say to have everything in place and up and going might take in excess of 10 years, maybe even a lot more than 10 years. What are your thoughts about anything that might be available, and how much should the county be involved for something that would maybe bridge the gap, something that's not as good as we'd prefer for our county citizens to have, but at least it's something while we're waiting for internet to have more coverage throughout, while we're waiting for River Street to have more coverage throughout the county. Any thoughts regarding that? Or do I need to clarify? Have I?
Yeah, I think all of you are aware of, there is an outfit out there that's trying to get it in the majority of the county as quickly as possible, the Stokes Wi-Fi group.
So is Stokes Wi-Fi doing this without need for any county assistance?
No, sir, they can use some assistance, if the county so chose to.
And how, if the county chose to provide some assistance, and this is something for the interim, don't want to interfere with River Street's long-term plans, but something on the interim, if the county chose, because it could help, it could make the difference between a business or businesses choosing to locate here or not locate here.
Right.
If they need internet access and we don't have it, they're going somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
So
And we do have children going to libraries.
we do, I hear that still. And that to me is not a fair situation. If you have this child, this child, this child with internet, and this one doesn't have it, and they have to go to the library or McDonald's, wherever they can find internet access, that's not quite a level playing field. So even if there's just a few folks in the county that have no option other than satellite, now here it's very expensive, something for now, even though it's not the deluxe approach that we would have with River Street, but something to kind of tide us over might be beneficial. So what would it take, Will, when I'm asked by a citizen, why do I not have internet access? And I don't wanna tell them it might be 10 years. What would it take for us to have at least an option available for those citizens? Maybe through Stokes Wi-Fi, maybe through something else, I don't know, whatever else is out there.
They're saying that 6 towers would basically cover over 90% of the county. Now, it is not as good a service by far as cable at River Street.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
Understood.
Rolls Royce, this would be a Cadillac or Chevrolet, I mean, you know, but
Or a
it
Ford.
is service, it is service, and it
Right.
does work, you know. And it can be done quickly with towers, you know. And I think most of you are aware, you know, we're hoping, hopefully you looked at me, I was fixing to say something I shouldn't.
No, I was listening.
Yeah, you know, we're working on a bill in Raleigh, you know, to, get it to where we can build our own towers and lease them to companies.
Oh.
So the county owns them. And if we can get this with these other 13 counties, and get this bill passed, then if y'all so choose, we'll build our own towers and lease them to these folks.
How much would that speed up the process?
They claim they could have it covered in a couple of years, you know, 90-some% of the county. With the wireless, but not what River Street's, 2 different things, but both
Sure.
of them are internet, yes, sir.
But if someone wanted to work from home, they
Yes.
may be able to do it with Stokes Wi-Fi. It wouldn't be
Yes,
as
sir.
snappy, wouldn't be as fast as River Street by any stretch, and when River Street became available, I could see a lot of people switching to it if they did try to work from home or had a home business. But anyway, I would like to kind of stay in a loop with that
Yes, sir.
and hear about the amount of progress, kind of progress that's being made. And also, if it means, some county money somehow, like you said, to build towers and lease them, which we will recover our investment over time, may even be profitable. I would certainly wanna take a look at that.
Just one comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
We're not allowed to give money to private companies. We have to determine a requirement and develop an RFP process and allow people to compete for any money that the county puts out for telecommunications or anything else, so.
Right, I understand.
So, you know, that, and then when you put towers up, you got zoning you have to go through. And so I don't think it's quite as simple a process as the vendor may be telling us it is, but, you know, maybe we can have them come in, talk to us and tell us
I'd like
what
to
they
just
can do.
keep track, and like you say, Commissioner Morris, nothing is simple anymore.
Mhm.
You always have these hoops to go through and hurdles to get over and
Laws to follow.
laws, absolutely. I don't wanna see a federal marshal come in looking for me.
AT&T's also putting 5G, getting ready to do 5G in some locations, so
All that-
that may be a solution with cell towers,
Right.
so you gotta look at all these options, I think.
I guess what I'm trying to say, Commissioner Morris and other commissioners and, staff and Will, is our citizens are telling me how important it is. These are the ones with extremely limited or no internet access, high-speed broadband access, how important it is to them, and I'm listening to them. And I would think some of the rest of you are hearing some of the same things I've been hearing. So it may be AT&T, it may be River Street really cranks it up, it may be newcomer like Stokes Wi-Fi, but my hope is we'll just keep a priority on this and look at how things can best fit together and how we can fill this need as quickly as possible. I like the sound of the towers and leasing them. I don't think we would bump into restrictions other than we have this zoning thing, which is always out there to contend with. Well, there was 25,000 for a wellness center feasibility study and capital reserve, right? That was one of the top first things on the list. One list I saw, and I don't know that I can put my hands on it right now. Julia, help me, you're looking very puzzled. It wasn't in the budget, it was on,
That was on that sheet that you had me print from the priorities, right? Is that what you meant? Is that what you meant?
not this one.
Okay.
This one, the very first item on the information I'm referring to was a $25,000 for a feasibility study for the wellness.
Information from today or from
No.
the past?
Past.
Okay.
This was earlier in the process. And I don't think I'm recalling this incorrectly. I think I remember seeing a sheet that had capital needs. And the first one was $25,000 for a feasibility study.
Mr. Chairman, you may be talking about my, budget I gave you.
Right?
I had capital projects in there with the.
I think it was.
And the very first capital project in there that showed with the appendix attached was the,
Wellness center
the wellness
feasibility
center.
study. I think you're right.
And you would see that in this thing that passed out to you on, that Shannon gave you,
Mhm.
our clerk. It, also has a question of whether or not you would like to move forward with some, feasibility studies. And,
When you see your document that you give them,
and my proposed.
yeah, behind your
page
letter.
22.
Okay. But it sounds like we'll be getting to that
You'll be
when we
getting
get to
that
this
and that
part of our
also.
meeting. Okay, I'll stop there, and anyone else has a question for Will or a comment they'd like to make?
I'll make one last comment, Mr. Chair. So one of the things we'll have to do is go through these capital projects and decide what we're gonna approve. If we were to decide that the water thing in Meadows is most important, we're talking about 6 months to a year to get the grant funding in place for that. So it's probably next year budget item when it comes down to it, other than us having matching funds ready.
But the thing is, Commissioner Morris,
So we gotta get moving on it.
exactly, took the words right out of my mouth. If we don't start somewhere, then it just keeps drifting off into the future.
You gotta get in the golden leaf cycle, and, I think they do 3 times a year. I believe, 4 times, either 3 or 4 times a year.
And,
Then USDA and whatever, there's
That's
a lot
part
of.
of what that USDA meeting next Tuesday will sort of establish is the timeline, a little bit of
Mhm.
cycles getting in on that, sort of that process.
Oh, okay.
Do what, so hopefully that'll be a good information meeting.
Golden Leaf was the major funder of our sewer, so they would likely be a good candidate to do the water.
Absolutely.
and the more valid information we can get, the more facts and figures to look at, the easier our task becomes on deciding how to deal with it. Golden Leaf, USDA, other sources. Okay, before Will moves on or makes his exit, anyone thought of anything else they'd like to mention?
I think the rest of his budget looks normal to me. Other than those couple areas I just asked about, I don't see anything. Yeah, I mean, it's got reclassifications and personnel stuff that we'll address separately, but lots of them have that, so.
Right. Thank you, Will, appreciate you
And
being
again,
here.
Thank
and-
y'all for supporting me on everything I've come to you for.
And
I appreciate it.
if anyone thinks of
Any
any
advice?
questions or
Yeah.
anything else they should have said, but for some reason didn't, I'm sure you'd be glad to talk with them or answer their questions,
Absolutely.
whatever.
My phone's on 24/7.
24/7, how about if I call you 3 o'clock in the morning?
I've actually been called close to midnight before, been called on holidays, and a businessman said, "Oh, I didn't realize it was a holiday," when I told him I was at the house.
Right.
I said, "It's no problem, you call me anytime, whatever. I work for the county around the clock," so.
It's a good outlook, appreciate
Yes,
you
sir.
having it. Thank you very
for the
much for being here.
opportunity, and, appreciate the guidance.
Have a good rest of your
Y'all-
afternoon.
y'all will know. Appreciate it, thank you.
See you later.
Yes, sir. careful going
Keep
home.
up the
Please
good
watch
work.
for
Yeah,
deer.
I have a few months of good history now.
Bye, Andy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Katie, you wanna sit up here? Okay. Anything anyone would like to say or anything else we need to do as far as department head review?
I just want to re-echo what Commissioner Morrison and you both said, and that is the acquiescence as far as speed in this. It takes a while for any of these projects, and if we want to accomplish one or two of these this coming year, I certainly believe that we are going to have to make some decisions in this budget cycle before we finish, because we need to get moving with it, as the two of you have said. I think
Thank you, sir.
we will have to make some decisions.
Anyone else? All right.
To say I did not include that, the water projects in capital project, because I didn't have any figures on that. It's the only reason it's not included on the sheet.
And it sounds like, Julia, we're starting to pull together some figures.
Yeah, I mean,
For-
they're
for
pulling
that
some
project.
together, but at the time of the budget, I didn't have
Exactly.
anything included.
Understand. Next item is item 3, review of budget goals and commissioners' priorities. This is not limited to just whatever we were saying earlier. We could each see what we said and what our fellow commissioners said from the information Shannon furnished for us. But this is a time, as I see it, to also just have some dialogue, have some discussion. What do you like about the budget that we're looking at now? What would you like to see different? Where would you like to see more of, less of? What can we agree on? Where are the deal breakers? Those types of things, to whatever degree we're willing to share them. And looking back, I see a lot of consistency. Some of these seems to have kind of faded into the background, and others are still very prominent. Let's see where we have agreement. I will start at the bottom and work back up, if that's okay. Start with number 21, salary study. Who would like to, and I see a lot of consistency on this item. Seems like we were all in support of a salary study then. Are we now?
Already approved it.
Already
I hope
approved.
so. You're about ready to get all your bids?
So nobody's changed their mind. Nobody's called Shannon and say, Shannon, let's call these providers and talk some more.
This has been approved now.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the RFPs are almost due.
That was easy.
I want to make sure
We'll
that,
start having the
I
bidders
just-
come and do.
I just want to make sure that I'm not sitting there thinking.
The only thing I can think of as far as further approval is we say salary study, there may be some difference in the views of the various commissioners on exactly what this study would encompass, and how it could best be done. There may be a little fine tuning during.
It's already been defined in the RFP though.
Yeah,
Only thing we gotta do now is select a vendor.
Right.
didn't one vendor come back and say that they questioned some part of how?
I've only had one to ask a couple of questions, there was nothing really major, and so I just, pretty much sent all his list of questions and responses back to everybody that's put a bid in, like, said they're gonna put a bid in, and they've all responded back, and there was nothing really major anyway, it was just a couple of clarification questions, but, yeah. So, and I've had a few respond back saying they were going to bid, and the date is, it's the end of this month, I can't remember the exact date, but it's June something.
Nice when things work the way they're supposed to.
Mhm.
All right. Comprehensive study on all capital buildings, seems to be a lot of support for that. And there's been some discussion about that as well as, and I think Jake said he was in the process of looking at that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The board has already gave me verbally, the response concerning the county buildings and moving forward with what I proposed and did. Now, I am working with the school board and getting their plan that they done in 17, or was it 17 or 15?
What their the last time they did a 5-year plan, it was, yeah, it was like 60.
Taking what information they do have, forwarding it off to the architect that we are using or planning on using, and he's gonna give us a cost proposal of adding all the schools in all their buildings into it also, and have a study done where it does everything, and then the county would know what needs to be taken care of, and when, and how, and what don't, what needs to be rebuilt, what needs to be remodeled, and what can wait a few years, and okay. Hopefully.
So that would be equivalent to a 5-year study on their part.
Everything,
Okay.
the county is, even though the school owns that schoolhouse, it is this board's responsibility to maintain it as far as the capital projects of maintenance.
Right, which we've been doing.
Which
Is
you
this
can do.
Perry Peterson doing this?
Perry Peterson is giving us a proposal on all of it now, and if the board elects to, then he will start as soon as possible and having us a plan by hopefully the first of the year.
Next item is consider urgent care facilities instead of a hospital. Little difference in views regarding that, but a lot of consensus as well. 4 commissioners favorable to urgent care. Any comments or thoughts? Next one, what are we going to do about medical facilities? Is LifeBrite going to be able to continue providing this service? Seems to be thoughts among the commissioners of saying we cannot continue to fund the hospital, but we do support LifeBrite. Now, here's a question. Is there anything that we need to keep going through this to talk about, or is a lot of it done enough to where we just need to have some open discussion regarding the budget, or is this helping kind of clarify our thoughts?
I don't need to discuss any of that.
Okay. So, for the sake of time and clarity, a lot of it we've already talked about anyway, and a lot of it we'll talk about when we deal with our managers and our finance directors, information they need. It helped me to go back and read what my public position is on some of these items. And the reason it helped me is because I like to be consistent. I don't like to bounce around on things. And pretty much the way I was in, whenever this was done, January, February?
That was February.
February. Is pretty much where I'm gonna be now, unless something very compelling has caused me to look otherwise. Okay, Commissioner Morris says he's comfortable just sort of skimming through this or not going through it at all. Commissioner Mendenhall, what are your thoughts?
I'm very flexible on this. If everybody else wants to go through it, I'm fine, and if not, I feel comfortable with it where it is.
Okay, Commissioner Young?
Yeah, I'm okay with skipping over this. I think a lot of these items we've kind of talked around already, or either we're proceeding with them, quite honestly. I think some of them are things that are probably next year's budgetary items.
They are.
And,
Let me toss, I'm sorry, were you finished?
yes.
Okay, let me toss this out for consideration. Take 30, 40 seconds, whatever, a minute, look it over, and if any of them pop out that you would like to talk about, now would be the time. If nobody comes up with anyone in particular, For example, would you like to see the education funds rate increased to 8 cents? Would you like to have SRO officers budgeted for all, these things? I don't know that we've talked about all of them, or just had discussion amongst ourselves about some of them. I know how I feel about some of these items. I don't know how you guys feel. So if any of them pop out that you'd like to discuss, maybe we can do it that way. If there are none, we'll just move on. Look it over one more time and see where we go from there.
I think we need to move on.
Okay?
I agree with,
Yeah, may I mention one thing?
Sure.
I think moving forward in this process, I think one of the key questions that's in here is, at what % are you willing to bring the fund balance down to, if any? I think that's something that we kind of need to answer up front.
I certainly agree with that. I think that was gonna be on the
Okay.
agenda today, but with Andy not here, I think everybody's wanting to get all 5 people's,
Right.
all 5 persons' opinion.
Okay.
So if y'all wanna do the other 4 and then Andy do his tomorrow, or we can wait and do all 5 tomorrow? I'm okay either
I
way.
just personally feel like to move forward, we need to have that. I don't think we can move anywhere until we know a consensus of what are we willing to utilize out of the fund balance, if any, and then adjust our budget to that. I don't know how you feel, Commissioner.
yeah,
Morrison, on that
I'd say
one.
sort of the same thing.
If I may, the board do it in work session, goal session, directed us at that time that they did not want to go under 25%. That you needed to stay there. Some of you already quoted 20 to 25%. This budget, this proposed budget here has got you at about 26%. And utilizing the fund balance that we are now.
So I would have to ask, if I may,
Sure.
the next question would be, once we know our commitment to that, is we have to start looking at what's reoccurring. It's just,
Sure.
so,
I agree. You always have to pay special attention to reoccurring.
Kinda like a reoccurring.
yeah. Just my suggestion.
There was a time, Commissioner Yachts, when we really avoided budgeting any reoccurring expenses from fund balance. We shied away from that, very strongly shied away from it. There is about, one point, how much reoccurring from fund balance in this budget?
Reoccurring?
Yes, sir. You said, I think you gave an answer off the top of the head, Mr. Manager, about a third,
Probably about a third.
yeah, was reoccurring.
If you've done everything, well, yeah, more than that. But,
But you're right.
you're gonna have your COLA, and you're gonna have your reclassifications and your new positions. Definitely, or reoccurring expenses. And then you are looking at, the, EMS as far as, adding ambulances, which would be reoccurring expense to personnel that would have to be brought on. And then you're looking at the BLS side of it for, convalescent care, that would have reoccurring expense to the side of that. So, yeah, if you looked at everything in the budget, then you probably are looking at a good third of what's requested being reoccurring. But, this is where the board will give us direction on whether or not you want to have that reoccurring expense in this budget for the future.
I guess we gotta define reoccurring, in my opinion, everything is reoccurring just about. Buy an ambulance, you're gonna buy another one in the next cycle, none of it is one-time expenditures. That's your bill to
You're
bill.
financing and spreading it over 3 or
Yeah.
4 years, you're still doing it every year.
Unless you build a building, I guess you could say that's sort of non-recurring. You don't build the same building twice, but
Say,
I think.
most everything else is gonna happen again. So,
Maybe not yearly, but
Not
It's just
annually,
some of
but-
the transfers to like capital reserve, you wouldn't have that at one time. Like $500,000, you're not gonna do that next year. But, I mean, that's the only, one off the top of my head.
To me,
something.
reoccurring is just part of the normal
Yeah.
business operation, that it's not a bad word. It's,
No,
I mean, the sun comes up every morning,
Yeah.
that's a reoccurring
Yeah.
event. We'd be in deep trouble if it wasn't reoccurring, so, or recurring, whatever the word.
Will cost
So
of
maybe I need to
utilities
say
go up, cost of,
This would be
Supplies.
recurring expense in addition to what you already have.
Yeah. Most things you add are gonna be.
One thing that we're gonna have to deal with sometime in some way is EMS. You mentioned adding another ambulance. There's this 2472 question that's looming out there.
if I make this kind of process, I know you don't wanna approve a lot of stuff without any here, but a lot of the things that you're mentioning are in here just kind of as a checklist to not forget some items if you want to just kind of run through it.
Well, let's do
I
it.
really don't have my own list that replaces that.
Right,
Right,
let's
exactly.
do it this way, Shannon and Commissioner Morris, if we will cover your list, obviously, and anyone else's. But, if I point to something on here that's on your list, we could either discuss it at this time and not discuss it later on this list, or if it would be better, I'm flexible on this, we can not discuss it now and discuss it later when we deal with this, either way. So if you'll just let us know, then we can decide what to do with it. I only have one or two. And I'm interested in this too. Where are you guys dug in? Where's your deal breakers? Where's your items that if they go a certain way, I think we need to know this. I think we need to know it from each other. If things are a certain way, we just cannot approve the budget with something in it that's just so far from where we're willing to go that we couldn't say yes to it.
Can I address that?
Yes, sir.
I'm not at that point yet on any item. My process for doing the budget, I've got 29 things here we need to address.
Oh, man.
That I think, just based on what my review of the budget and the discussions we've had already, and you guys probably have some things to add to it. I wanna go through these 29 items and get them on the table. They'll be in my blog tonight for anybody who wants to look at them later. And then add to whatever you other guys have that need to be discussed. Then I wanna go through the equipment and the personnel list that are provided in the back of the budget, and I wanna go through, the individual, budget sheets, and I've got probably questions on 10 or 15 of those. And before I can start making any decisions, I need to get my questions answered. And then my next approach will be to develop some scenarios and then get Julian to price them.
Right.
So I can see it. I mean, that's my process for doing the budget, and then we'll have some scenarios down we can I can compare to what you guys want to do. But I need to go through this stuff with the staff and get some answers back before I can do that. I'm not ready to pick things I can or can't live with yet.
Well,
I don't know, I don't have enough information to do that.
Can give you one of my examples, if I may, and then at some point you can start on, I guess you have a couple of lists there. One of mine is, and there was a lot of consensus with this, and this part of the process, is I don't wanna see a tax increase in this budget. So right off the top of the head, if the budget has a jump in property tax rate, which I'm not seeing that presented by the manager, I'm not seeing interest. But that would be, an example of a deal breaker for me. There are other things that, I have my view on, and some of them are very much in the direction of I can give to a point, but not beyond a certain point. Commissioner Morris has said that he has quite an extensive list to go through, and, he certainly can, and I encourage him to do whatever he thinks he needs to do as far as his comfort level with the budget process. But prior to him getting started on his long list, does anyone else have anything for now that they feel like they need to mention?
I'll be glad to go last.
Very generous of you, so you have an offer on the table, that Commissioner Morris is willing to go last, so who would like to go now?
Well, I'm gonna wait till Rick goes, because he probably has a lot of what I have.
I
And,
think
you know,
all of
I
us.
can knock that out, but the one you gave is also, for me, I do not want to see a, tax raise. But after that one, I'd rather hear Rick, because if he's got 29, he's probably got a lot of mine.
Probably so.
Commissioner Yachts, anything
I
on
concur
top?
with Commissioner Mendenhall. I think that if you have 29 listed, I don't quite have 29. There's about
Okay.
12 or 13 that I have, but I have a feeling that once you complete, I
Okay.
may have 3 or 4.
Okay. I
One kind of
understand.
housekeeping question, Commissioner Morris, as you're getting started with your list, is if a commissioner, and again, I've just opened this up pretty much for discussion at will. If a commissioner has a question or a comment regarding one of your items, would it be appropriate for them to ask their question, make their comment, or would you rather have sort of a protected time, which I'll honor if it's your choice, to go through all of it and then answer any questions or hear any comments?
I'll do it whichever way you guys want to do it. I don't really care one way or the other.
Okay, so
No preference.
Commissioner Yachts or Mendenhall or I have a question.
I would prefer, if you're okay with it, for us to be able to ask questions as we're moving along.
Okay,
because,
that's
again,
fine.
it would probably answer a lot of.
Okay. Like I said, I'll put this in my blog either in the next 2 or 3 days to refer back to for you guys. Plus I'll add to it with
And,
stuff that you say as well, comments that you guys make.
and for the sake of expediency, you do not have to address me as chair if you have a question or
Okay.
comment. Just at an appropriate time, just go ahead and direct it to Commissioner Morris.
Okay, let me start with a basic question to start with. It's actually not on my list, but the amount you guys recommended, what's the total amount with your recommendation plus what you recommended for the school system? What's that equal, 52 something?
52.
Yes, 52 whatever, with a little bit added to it, right?
52.
Okay, this may or may not be a correct assumption. If we keep the level of the budget we approve at that level or lower, then we shouldn't have to do a tax increase. Is that correct, according to your calculations?
If you use fund balance.
Yeah, using fund balance, we always use fund balance, that's not gonna be a question, I wouldn't think. So that's like, I'm just trying to establish a target that we're gonna shoot for, as our upper level of spending, and I guess it would be that 52 whatever. Would you agree with that, Julia?
52,870,126.
Yeah, that's what you guys recommended, and then we may add to it, which then could cause us to have to, well,
870,126.
126.
okay, so my first question, this is one we may want to discuss, the decision to take the $1.1 million out of the 4-cent fund. Okay, if we do that, if we stay with your recommendation, then what this topic we just discussed is true. If we put 1.1 million in that fund like we've been doing, then all of a sudden that's not true anymore. You take 1.1 million away from that 52 whatever, right, to not raise taxes. Is that right, Julie? Am I on the right track?
What'd you?
See what I'm saying? If you're assuming when when we use that number that y'all recommended, we don't have to raise taxes, you're assuming that we are gonna spend this 1.1 million that we've been putting in the 4-cent
Correct.
fund. Okay, my question is, what's the thought process for taking that 1.1 million out of the 4-cent fund? Because we ain't ever done that before. As far as I know, we don't have a run from Doug Carter on what the impact of it is. So I don't understand, I'm not sure how we're gonna do the budget, so we at least get him to do a run so we know what we're working with.
He gave a model with that out.
Well, he said he didn't have one other night when he was here. He wasn't aware that we were taking the 1.1 out.
I thought
He did give one, yeah, he did give it, gave a scenario.
But he said he wasn't aware we were taking it out, so how could he have given us a
See,
scenario?
I had told Andrew that it was not budgeted.
Oh, you told him ahead of time?
Yeah.
Well, Doug just didn't know then? that-
I don't know, Doug didn't know, but Andrew.
So
I had
Andrew
talked to Andrew.
had run a model
Yeah.
that took it out, okay.
And I forgot which one that was.
I got all the versions.
So that means that we could take the 1 million out of the
And I
4-cent
think it
fund?
wasn't- That wouldn't have a fund balance after
2023.
2020, yeah.
It was the
If
23,
you took it
24.
every year.
If you took it every year out,
Well, he said, he made a comment before he left, we could take it out once every so many years.
you know.
Right.
But we've never taken it out before, so what's the thought process for why we're taking it out?
It was
Just to
gonna
find
take
money to
4
spend on
million
other
some
things?
dollars out of fund balance.
Do what?
It's gonna take $1 million some dollars out of fund balance.
Additional.
Yeah, but then does that justify robbing the 4-cent fund to spend other things? I mean, that's the question. That's my question I don't have the answer to, but I'd like to understand, I mean, if you wanna spend money on other things besides the 4-cent fund, but then we better make it real clear that we're playing with the 4-cent fund to the public when we start taking revenue sources away from it. So that's my number one. That's a longer one. The rest of them aren't that long.
Hey, before you move on,
Unless you have
Commissioner
other questions.
Morris, let me be sure that I completely understand what your question is. It seems to be that this is, a departure from business as usual with the 4-cent fund.
It
We
is.
haven't done this before, so why are we doing it now?
Yeah.
And also, if we allocate a certain amount, I think you said 1.1 million or something to that effect, from the 4-cent fund,
From the general fund to the 4-cent fund. That's what we've
are
been
we
doing.
really committing to that same thing to happen in the future? Is that part of your question?
Well, we gotta decide, because in the past, we've never robbed the 4-cent fund for spending it on other things I don't think we have we, by removing a revenue source like that, have
We
we?
took $1.2 million out to do some roof, the Chestnut Grove roof, and then that didn't cost that much, and then we did some other projects.
Okay, yeah, but we advertised that to the public for what we're doing, so.
Actually,
But this we're taking out, not necessarily to spend on school stuff, we're taking it out to spend on other stuff, right? Possibly.
Commissioner Morris, those capital expenditures, that Julia referenced for the schools, I think they are what we initially described as the 4-cent fund as being used for.
No, we described it for specific projects.
Right,
And then
Poplar
we added
Springs,
additional projects to
Southeastern.
it. And
Right.
which were along the same lines of what we originally put the fund together for, but we advertised that we did that. But if we're gonna take 1.1 million out of it, which is its normal general fund flow into it, and not spend it on a specific project that we advertised
Right.
for the school system, then we've gotta let the public know that we're changing the use of that fund.
Right.
I mean, to me, we're impacting the fund, maybe not changing the use of it. I guess the follow-on question is, and I think we've all informally discussed this, is what are we gonna do with that fund? There's interest in expanding the use of it, so the two of those are tied together, but.
Well, can we do this? I know you have a lot of other items. Can we ask Shannon to put that on her list list of items to be discussed more in depth
Oh, yeah,
at a later time in the budget
yeah, that's
process.
fine, that's good. But that's a big,
And also,
those two are big decisions on
we
it.
also are missing a commissioner, and some of these
Mhm.
items would be better discussed with all five of us.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, most of them would probably. Okay, so that, to me, that's a big issue, though, whenever you make a big change like that, and it could very easily be interpreted as you're just pulling money out to go spend on something, you're robbing that fund to go spend on something that's not part of what that fund was approved for, so.
Very good.
I want to make the public clear what we're doing there. Then, like I said, determine what the use of the 4 cent fund's going to be, if we're going to expand the use of it, which is, I think, perfectly legitimate if the board agrees to do that and advertises it. Then the third one, determine fund balance level and reporting requirement by the Board of Education on how the fund balance will be used. This relates to the Board of Education about what their fund balance level should be. And then, what Lynette already tells us what she spent. There's no requirement, I don't think, for her to tell us what she spends her fund balance on, but she does it anyway for transparency purposes. So, but I just threw in there, should we ask them to do that? She's already doing it, but if you want to ask them to, say we give them a much larger fund balance for the coming year, do you want some kind of report back when we meet next year about what it got spent on, given that you're probably going to get it anyway from Lynette? Then the fourth thing is assessment of the county buildings, and we talked about that already, and I like the idea of combining the school buildings with that, since we own most of them, and get an assessment so we know what the requirement is as far as properly maintaining our buildings. School capital and current expense amounts, we just got to have that normal discussion you would have on how much we're going to approve in each of those, and we discussed that very well the other night. Then we got the personnel decisions. We've got to do reclassifications. I'm particularly interested in mismatches on classifications, and especially if two people are doing the exact same job and getting paid differently from the reclassification side. Then we got to look at the step increases, new positions, and a COLA decision that was recommended in the budget.
Can I ask this, Commissioner Morris? What would it take? Now, the others, I can kind of see the source of where we would look for our answer. I'm a little bit unsure on this particular item, how we would get the information that you're needing.
What I was planning
And
on.
I'm sort of with you on that. I
Mhm.
would like further information, see how all the pieces fit together, but where do you see that information coming from?
Well, we've got in a personnel, Julia's normal personnel attachment covers doesn't cover the COLA, but it covers the other three. And I think we just need to set aside a time to go through both the equipment list and the personnel list, and each one of us ask our questions on each position that's in there.
Okay.
Y'all gonna want a copy of
We've already got a copy of the personnel.
the list, but
Mhm.
I mean, y'all aren't wanting copies of what the department give as justification, are you?
No, I don't need that. I'd rather just ask,
That's what I was asking.
I just ask some general questions, and then
I
y'all
just
can
wanna make
refer to
sure.
that. No, I don't want any more paper.
We have it over here,
Okay,
if anybody wants to view it, you know.
okay.
I went through that one time. That's quite a task.
But I think sometime when all five of us are here, we need to go through both of those
Yeah.
lists
That's usually what they
and
do.
put out our positions on what equipment we should purchase, and then our thoughts on each one of those personnel actions that are listed there. And Julius makes that easy to do by providing the two attachments that one covers equipment, one covers personnel.
Okay, excuse me just a second again, Commissioner Morris, pardon me for interrupting your flow, but
No problem.
Shannon, you're taking notes of what we will be discussing in particular, okay?
I'm gonna type this up, so
And if any,
you can get it later.
and remember, Commissioner Mendenhall, Commissioner Yost, if at any time you feel like you have a thought regarding an item that Commissioner Morris is bringing forth, please ask your question, because I think we all agreed we'd do it as he goes along. Certainly you could do it after as well, but while it's fresh on your mind, feel welcome, and I think you agreed to this,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
One piece of information I would like to get, Shannon, if you haven't already given it to us in that big book, is just a list of the department heads and what grades they are, what their pay grades are. You already given us that? Is it in there?
But I go, we can,
It is sent, if you could send the whole board a list of that, I think it might be helpful.
Right, and as Commissioner Morris said, if you pull it for him, pull it for all of us, please, because that way we all have the
Email
same thing
everybody.
to refer to.
Then we gotta do the equipment decisions for the county, I just talked about that. Feasibility study for the wellness center. I think we talked about 25K for that. I would like, if we approve that, I would like for that, if we approve doing it, I would like that study brought back to the board whenever they're ready to do that, so that we can help define the terms of reference for the study, about what it should look at. And we gotta look at capital reserve levels for various projects. We gotta look at capital projects fund, the capital projects fund that Julia, asked about earlier. And go through those individually and decide if we're gonna fund any of those capital projects. We gotta look at the water project in Meadows and start the grant process if that's, something we want to approve. I think we need to get 5-year capital plans. We've got enough, we got with the equipment list and with the list the school gave us, we got enough to make our budget decisions for this year on capital, but I think before the next budget, it'd be good to have a 5-year capital plan from both us and the school that's unconstrained. And, as far as resources go, just what's the real need, and that we can, like I said, constrain it later. We need to look at the fee schedule and decide if we're going to increase or leave any of the or increase or decrease any of the fees that we charge for various services, or leave them the same. And I think there's some recommended in there, like some new fees, like, there was one from the fire marshal, doing plan reviews, is that what it
yeah,
was?
yeah, there's always something in there for like repeat visits and
Yeah.
do violations and things like that.
Yeah, I just look at the whole fee schedule probably, and if anybody's interested in changing it. Gotta resolve this overtime thing, 1/2 time or real time. That's all probably part of that 2472 discussion. The thing on the fuel points that was recommended, establish, or putting in new fuel points, I think we've gotta, discuss that and decide. I think that will be somewhat dependent on if we make any changes in the location of the county garage, for instance. So, I would probably maybe wanna delay that decision till we know the other one. And then also, address the issue of using propane in the vehicles that the sheriff is currently doing. We gotta decide the tax collection rate. There's been discussion informally, I think, on occupancy tax, whether we wanna, implement that or not. All the computers that are recommended in the equipment list, I want to make sure that Diana, approved all of those. Has
She
she?
always does the list, so I always give her the list.
Everything recommended was approved by her.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we got the library and pay raise that we've heard a whole lot about. Interesting, during public comments, the lady said that the Springsteen folks said they were 28% lower, which I thought was kind of a big number.
I was surprised.
Then I want to, just a general question is, look at how auto supplies are budgeted, given that we're doing the lease program, how you guys approach that. Are they the same levels as last year, or do we not need them this year, or what's the deal with that?
Left them at the same, no one yet.
Okay. Well, we probably need to think that through about what we'll need with, having all new vehicles.
You're adding
and
all
stuff.
this for further discussion,
Yeah.
I know, Shannon, but, regarding that item, I wanna check my memory base. Seems like we're still doing the maintenance, even though we're leasing the vehicles. They'll be newer, so there'll probably be less maintenance, but our folks will still be doing it, as I understand
The
it.
oil changes, the tires,
Yeah.
routine.
They'll be under warranty though.
Right, they all will, which is nice.
So, my question is just, do we need to adjust that auto supplies thing? What changes might occur if we do a DSS and health board, if we reinstate those, which I think we're about, we having a
We
public
have to do a
hearing?
public hearing, but I've not tried to schedule that right now with all these meetings
Okay.
too.
I'd say
So we
beyond,
get our- I'd say we're trying to
unless,
get-
But that may have some budget impact as far as reimbursement to the boards or whatever possibly, so.
unless a commissioner has strong feelings otherwise, Shannon, I would hope that would be after our budget.
Yeah, it's a little difficult with the dates.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying, should the budget consider it for, if, put a contingency in if we decide to do that?
We can discuss
Possibly.
that.
Yeah.
We look maybe back when there was a true DSS and help a different health board in and see how much it impacted. That would be some different, but if there was an impact on it then.
The only difference I can think of is
Travel, that's where it was.
$30 per
$30
member
meeting.
per meeting,
Okay.
which is not, even if you add it all together, it's not a very, will not have much impact on the
I
budget.
think that's what the health board was, offering $30.
And I've got that list with the current rate, so we could look at it and see.
I just think that things like training and things like that may have a cost as well.
Good.
Think about any other county employees we want to meet with during the budget process. We need to develop, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm just kind of trying to develop a budget position that I can give you guys along to compare with yours, so we can then reconcile, get this done as efficiently as possible. We need to, if we're going to support the YMCA's recommendation in the budget for their, like a $2,000 or $3,000 increase, I think. I guess we need to discuss this thing that, I support totally what the fire commission says in most all cases probably, but we had this one gentleman, chief, come up and ask about, funding debt on a building in another county. So I think from a policy perspective, it's a budget type of issue. We may need to discuss that during this process to decide, in fact, if we, because fire districts and county boundaries contradict each other. So if, and they're asking us to fund debt on a new building, so a portion of their debt. So we need to probably do a policy discussion on that.
Could I ask a question regarding that? Would like to ask a question, Commissioner Morrison. One thing that I have considered ongoing is how much authority are we actually giving our fire commission? Regarding this particular item, is this something that they have reviewed and made a recommendation on, or did the fire chief just come on their own?
They have for this year, but I think for them to do their job, we have to give them proper policies to work with.
Sure.
If we have a policy that says we're not funding any debt on a building in another county, then that would help them make a decision. Otherwise, I think they're kind of in a quandary a little bit. Because we don't have a policy that says you can't do it.
And I'm not sure that we have a policy that says it's allowable.
No, we don't. We don't have either one. That's my point. We don't have a policy.
What
so.
I'm asking is, we have people on the fire commission that are actually closer to the ongoing operations of our fire department than I am and the other commissioners probably are. So would it be within the range of what's reasonable to ask them to say, here's the situation, we will make a ruling on it, but we would like to have a recommendation from you guys as far as how to handle this?
I don't think it's their job to set county budget policy. And to me, this is a budget policy decision about whether, because I think it's the first, we give all these fire departments that are not in the county funding to operate because they have fire district here, but we've never, I don't think we've had this come up where they've asked us to fund a building in another county because it has implications if, for instance, if the fire went away or something. I think we need a policy decision on that. We can check with Ty and see what he thinks.
Right,
too.
and the reason I'm asking about the recommendation is I certainly don't mind, offering or deciding a policy. But I like all the information I can get, prior to making that kind of decision on what really is the fairest, best way to deal with a particular issue. So, yes, I completely understand it's our position, this board's, tasked to set the policy, but I would like as much information as possible to make the best decision when that time comes. Thank you, sir.
Okay, then, we need job descriptions for any added positions or reclassifications that we approve, so we can approve those job descriptions. We need, then we need, like we talked about earlier, what level is the maximum level we'll let the fund balance, or the county's general fund balance go down to, and then a tax increase, yes or no. So that's my list, my initial list. I have an idea, forgot a bunch of stuff, but
Okay.
I think those are things that you would probably all agree we need to address during the process here.
Good items. Appreciate you pulling that list together. Commissioner Yance or Mendenhall, do y'all have anything? I'll give y'all some time, and then after y'all have y'all's time, we'll have a recess.
I will pass it to Commissioner Yance, because I'll be honest, Commissioner Morris had just about every one I had.
Pretty comprehensive list.
I can echo, you've hit on every topic that I had actually, but I would like to go back and revisit some of the larger ones that you had mentioned, and those larger ones, of course, I think are decisions that, again, I hate to go back to, that we need to make a decision to start moving forward, is the personnel issues, reclassification, step increases, new positions, and the COLAs. And it's something that I just wanted to throw out that I've kind of been contemplating, for everyone to digest, and something that I think that you also spoke to the librarian issue that we have, and it was 28% is not acceptable to me, and obviously 2% COLA is not going to catch them up. So that all being said, I would certainly like to visit those, Jake, that you know are way out of whack. However, outside of that, it's kind of something I had kicked around, is instead of doing the steps and reclasses, we kind of let the salary study dictate that next year. However, with the salary study, I think we're going to see increases, and obviously we're not going to be able to do those in a year. So instead of a 2% COLA, if we looked at a 3 or a 4, to kind of get us looking at that for next year. In other words, we would be a little bit ahead of the curve on that. I don't know what you guys feel, but something that I kind of kicked around, so something to throw out there.
Well, I would say that is one of the things that I had on my list that was very important to me, was the salary study, and then versus the reclassifications and the new positions. Salary study's going to indicate and show us a lot, I think, when it's completed. And I personally agree with you that we can take a closer look at whether we want to go on forward with the reclass and the new positions with the salary study coming up this year. And as far as the COLA, I definitely want a COLA. I know there was a 2% recommendation. And, you know, I could probably go 3, but I'd want the board totally in support of that. And so that was one of the big things I had that you brought up, was salary study versus, and then taking it from there.
So that being said, I guess what I would like to do is look at the ones that we feel pretty strongly about, and then look at that against a 4% or a 3% model, and see what we would, the impact would be that way, versus all the steps and things that were in the budget. So those are big ones. Obviously, the school capital and current, making a decision on that moving forward, if we're comfortable with the county manager's recommendation, or if we think there needs to be more or less. Those are, those are big ticket items that we kind of feel like we need to get those behind us and move along. And not that all of these are important items, but I would kind of like to start with the big ones and work our way down, so. Again, everything that you touched on was a lot of the things that I had put on here. There's some little things. I think we talked about a generator at the facility. And I don't know if that could be incorporated into when we do the fuel project there, or if we need to keep them separate. That's something else I was throwing out there. It's not a big ticket item, but $100,000 for the generator. We maybe need to look at doing that at the same time that we do the fuel. Just some things like that. Outside of that, I don't have really anything to add to the 29 items that you mentioned.
I was gonna say that's why I wanted him to go first, because I was trying to point out most of mine off. And, but I think, one thing that we do need to really focus in on is the equipment that has been mentioned by both Commissioner Yachts and Commissioner Morris. I know it hasn't been emphasized a whole lot, but, it's very important in my mind. I want to know exactly what it's going to do for us as far as final amount. So Commissioner Walker, like I said, I had a feeling they will get most of mine, so I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, and, again, in fairness to the situation, I think we need to leave this, excuse me, I'm sorry. We need to leave this open-ended to some extent and deal with it further when, Chairman Nicholson's here with us. So when we do that, if anyone's thought of anything else they want to add to their list or reconsider it or whatever, we can maybe do it at that time. So Shannon, if the board is interested, maybe at tomorrow's meeting, I think we're meeting at 4 tomorrow, we can give, well, he'll be running the meeting if he's here, give Chairman Nicholson a chance to add his and ask any questions about what we've done here today. And if any of us 4 commissioners have anything else we've thought of, need to mention, we can maybe do it at that time. I have a few. One is, one thing that's not been mentioned so far in the budget, we're working on this, but I don't see it actually specifically addressed. And I would like some discussion on what we're doing and what more can we do regarding the opioid crisis. Still, that's very important to our citizens. They want to know that we're trying to do our part in dealing with this, so if we can have some further discussion at some point about that issue, I would like that on the list. There's one thing that's kind of an interesting, by the way type item here. Going through the information Shannon gave us back from the goals setting session, there was some interest, and I don't know, Jake, if there's been any action in this direction on the part of your staff or not, but there's some interest, it appears, on the part of the board, if a department head was not comfortable with what amount they were funded in the budget, they could appeal to us. And there was some interest on the part of this board, more with some commissioners than others, which is what you normally would expect. There was some interest on the part of this board in allowing that, and I don't know whether that's still a consideration or not, but it was kind of on my list to circle back around to. So what are the thoughts of the other commissioners, if I may ask? At the time of our goal setting time, there did seem to be some interest. I don't know whether it's still there or not. And I'd be interested in Jake's thoughts as well.
From what I recall, you all had interest in meeting with department heads if they wanted to meet with you, but you didn't have interest in really hearing a lot of appeals for things. Now, something like the EMS situation was different because he had so much to come.
Right.
But as far as just ordinary cuts, the consensus
let me ask you this, Shannon. Based on what you just said, are there any department heads you, Jake, or anyone's aware of that you feel like would like to have appealed their amount, but we've not heard from them? So we're good with that?
Not other than the ones that you've had here already.
And
Of course, Eddie wants to come see it as
I
well.
feel like that question is premature because we really don't have a final, amount. For example, the EMS, I mean, we still don't know how, I mean, we don't know where we're at as our final decision. So I don't think they can appeal anytime soon until we get completed, and I really feel more comfortable that we just get the department heads that would like to come in and give an explanation of what they requested instead of, giving an appeal, because I don't know how y'all feel, but, that could be quite a number that wanted to come back and appeal their amount, and that's just my opinion. My opinion only, Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
And I pretty much agree with you, Commissioner Mendenhall, in that if we open that door, how wide open is it gonna be? But if there's someone who, and I don't even know that appeal is the best choice of words for this particular situation. But if there's someone and all it is now, as you pointed out, is a recommendation. If someone was out there and they just really felt like we didn't see the whole picture, hadn't had a chance to explain it enough, whatever, then the question would be, do we want to give them an audience? But I'm good with kind of going on down the path we seem to be going down and not opening that door unless we feel like we really need to for some reason.
I think it's a flawed process to appeal your boss's decisions.
You could have some
Might work
risk.
here, but most places I worked, I wouldn't appeal my boss's decisions to his boss. Because I still work for him after it's all over with. or
Exactly.
her.
Could have some risk, couldn't it, Commissioner Morris?
Yeah, I mean, some unnecessary risk.
I don't think there was, but one, that was Brandon about the 6th unit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I thought he
I don't
handled
think
that
I've
well.
heard anything, none of them have said anything to me, but that don't mean anything.
It does to me. I have a lot of respect
I
for you
mean,
and your
I
position.
don't know that, and I don't think Jake's heard anything else, except Brandon just had concern about the 6th unit.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna discuss a study for the wellness center, and I'd like to go a little bit, further down that path and ask the board this, or board members this. Suppose the feasibility study comes back favorable, then what?
If it's unfavorable,
If it's favorable, if it's thumbs up, then what?
Take it to the next step, see if you fund it or not.
Do you mean favorable as in you're in good shape, like
No, no,
things are?
no,
you mean
no, this
favorable as in-
this
If it's
study
feasible.
would be designed to determine citizens' interest, location, what activities or, what the facility would offer. I envision a fairly comprehensive type of study. But if it comes back full thumbs up, yes, we want it, we need it, why haven't you done it already, that type thing, then what?
Well, it comes back either feasible or non-feasible.
Feasible, it comes back
If it's
feasible.
feasible, then you discuss it as a budget item. That'd be the next step. Then it gets into where you afford it or not, I guess.
Or how we can afford it, grants, long-term finance, whatever.
I'd call it some size of wellness.
This-
I don't even know what that is.
We had to go with the name that was chosen for it, Commissioner Morris, because that was Josh Carswell, he's our USDA guy. That was his recommendation, that we do not call it a recreation center. He said they would view very highly the possibility of funding a wellness center, a community wellness center. but there was very little likelihood of getting funding for a recreation center.
Maybe he'll explain the difference to me someday.
There's really no difference, it's just a matter of what it's called. That's how I understand it, anyway.
I hope
He
it's
said
some-
the recreation center, they do not fund.
Yeah, he's adamant you stay away from the word recreation.
Yeah.
So we came up with Community and Wellness Center.
And to get the parks grant, you have to have a feasibility study
Okay.
to go after a parks grant.
I
Most
think
all
we-
grants you do.
I think we want all the grants we can get. Another thing, this is not necessarily a budgetary item, but you heard Will say today in his presentation that he could see some benefit to the county co-oping with the city of King, town of King, but whatever, on their packaged sewer plant, $14 million plant. My question is, if King would look at Walnut Cove and how successful the constructed wetlands has been, would they consider doing something like that, which is much more environmentally friendly than a packaged sewer plant? And Walnut Coves couldn't have performed much better, I don't believe. It's been there, I think, 30 years. They're gonna clean it up some, and it's good for another 30 years. So I'm wondering, and just a guess based on Walnut Cove's expense, a few $1 million versus $14 million. I would be much more interested in seeing the county work with King on something like that versus a run-of-the-mill package plant. But anyhow, just something to think about. That's more than we can process here at this meeting. There was a lot of interest too, and regardless of what happens with the wellness center, where it's located, when it's built, that type thing, of cleaning up the old prison campsite. Now, Jake, is there money in the current budget for cleaning up the prison site? And so if it's approved,
It's in Mark Belmont, but
right, okay. Just wanted to be sure. I thought it was.
It's a public buildings budget.
And are we willing to start an incentive program for municipalities? That'd be economic development. Need to think about that one. Hospital, not really a budget item. I'm gonna leave that off the list and go with what we have. Does anyone else have anything before we have a recess?
I'll just make one comment, Mr. Chair, that I kind of conceptually agree with the other two commissioners that did, on the idea of not getting in front of the salary study too much and maybe increasing COLA. With this, I think it's pretty well, a pretty good probability that we're gonna have some recommended pay increases that can't be done in 1 year. when
Right,
this study's done.
phased in generally.
And it phased in, and if we, first of all, like I said, we're hiring professionals to do this, so I don't wanna do their job for them, and whenever they can probably do it better. And second, if we give like a 4% COLA, that would be a step, that would be really the first step of phasing in the funding to fix the problem, even though this year it'd be somewhat general in nature. Next year it'd be more specific once we get a salary study done, but on reclassifications and step increases, I would definitely probably lean toward a higher COLA instead of doing those. On new positions, I think we need to analyze those and see exactly why they're asking for them. Because there could be like, I haven't looked that close, but like the jail might need some new ones because we got a big new jail or whatever, so. So conceptually, I kind of agree with that idea that Commissioner Yance came up with.
I do also, with one exception. Interested in what the exception is? Okay.
I may have exceptions too, a few exceptions.
Try to be nice. Anyhow, Commissioner Mendon and all the others, my exception is, I've never heard Commissioner Mendon, I don't recall his views on this. I know what Commissioner Morris has said his views are. He agrees with me. Don't know for sure where Commissioner Yance is, but instead of a larger COLA, I think really, when we get way out ahead of what the actual cost of living increase is, I don't even think it's right to call it a COLA anymore. It's just more, here's more money type increase. So what I'm in favor of is part of that money going for a COLA and part of it going for a merit program. And I'd be willing to put some money toward the merit program, figure out how it's to be done, should that be part of the classification study? And I'd be more interested in that instead of just giving it to everyone. Have been along for years, never really changed on that. Could anyone share their thoughts about that, or would anyone share what their thinking is?
I'm in favor long-term for a merit program. I'm not sure that taking part of the COLA to do it is, whenever we're trying to fix this salary problem, is the exact right approach, but conceptually, I agree with getting a merit program in place. You know, one way of doing merit programs is take the amount of salary you have and rearrange it without adding to it.
Mr. Vice Chair, oh, I'm sorry.
But gets a little complicated too. That's all I have.
I'd like to get the county manager's input on this.
Sure.
What's your opinion there, Mr. Oakley?
Could we, before we do that, could we?
Take a break?
No, have it give Commissioner Yachts a chance for his input.
Yeah, I'm in favor of a merit system at some point in time. However, I feel like a cost of living increase, even if we went as much as 4%, unless someone can show me compelling evidence otherwise, I don't think that puts us where we need to be even at that, at 4%. So I'm in favor of looking strongly at 4%. I understand your position on that, but yeah, from that point forward, a merit program would definitely be something that I would consider and I would strongly encourage. I think it only makes your employees better.
Gives them an incentive to
Yeah,
want to
certainly.
do the best they can. Now, regarding Commissioner Mendenhall's question, Mr. Manager, he asked for your thoughts.
Well, you know, you always got your incentive to reward staff for jobs well done. And I totally understand that. However, the board would like for that decision to be set up, whether it be a merit step base or whether it be just the, increase in yearly increase due to their anniversary date, like we currently are doing, and everyone gets it. If you want to look at an incentive type thing, right now, it would be, as far as salary study concerned, would be the salary increase, or you could look at increasing the 401K, 457 contributions from the county, which could be utilized, could be looked at as a salary, as part of their salary or the increase in salary. So, you know, if you wanted, right now you're doing 1% of my salary, but if you wanted to look at maybe doubling that and doing 2% of my salary and giving me an incentive where I'd be willing to look at more of my own, base of retirement. And that way, so, you know, I've got a 401K here, I went on it as soon as the county offered the 1% 401K back. I don't know, late nineties, Julia, who knows when it was, but you know, when they offered it, I took advantage of it. And it's just, I'm matching my salary and my 1%. If you went to 2%, you know, be double what I would have in that. You'd be surprised what you'd have in 30 years.
Oh, man. Put a smile on your face.
But there's another type of incentive that
And this one could be on our list. Now, where I am on the 4% COLA or whatever percent COLA is I will keep an open mind. Got to balance this with the school system's needs, got to balance it with all the other expenditures we have. And just see how it all fits together in a way that makes the most sense. And I'm not saying yes or no to anything right now, but I just wanna see, get deeper into the budget process before I really commit to specifics. And this is one thing, you know, keep under consideration, but I need to see how the budget is looking when we get further along with it. And again, my objective is to be as fair as possible to all involved. Use our resources the best way we can to address the needs and wants of our citizens. Let's take a recess, okay? About 10 minutes worth, maybe? Wake up, Commissioner Mendon.
Maybe candy right now, sugar did something this morning and I'm
let us know when you're ready.
I thought I had.
Jake, are we ready?
We ready?
Oh, anyone else have anything that we need to do? I think I've already asked this, but anything before we move to the next item? Anyone thought of anything else they need to say about, what we're, the item we're just finishing? If not, Jake, go ahead and do, what you need to do with item 4, please.
Budget deliberations, talk about what's in the budget, what the board would like to see left in the budget, what the board would like to see taken out, what they'd like to see adjusted. I also prepared a list of what I would like to see the board taking action on, along with Shannon, along with Julia, that the budget has to be approved. You would see in this list here, and I realize Commissioner Morris had a lot of items and concerns, and some questions he would have to answer. A lot of those answers, a lot of this is in here, and some of it may not. But anyway, Shannon took the notes on what all of those procedures are, and these questions are, and then Commissioner Morris said he could forward that list to us to where we could have a chance to prepare ourselves on answering those questions if they're not answered here. But I would need to know, if you start with your list here, and you're looking at your item, like item 1, and that's the tax rate for the current county budget at 31 cents. And you can see in red here, during the process of adjusting the general county and the school's current expense rate, we would need to know if these rates are to be adjusted or taken from the general fund. That would be what the school is increased from last year, okay? If the school's current expenses are increased by $500,000, then that $500,000 would either be an increase in their tax rate with a reduction to the county side of it, or either it will be $500,000 added to the general fund balance that we would take, or you would have a tax increase on that side of your 62-cent tax fund. And then, you would say yes or no to that, and with the school fund also. And then you have your general fund, and you can see where this $1,139,775 is what's being transferred to the education fund. It was not recommended in my budget to be transferred this time, due to the amount of general fund that was already being requested, and talking with the financial advisors on it, where it would seem to think that that the county elected not to transfer these funds to make sure that they were able to do special projects in that year, that no more than once every 5 years that this fund could be not funded to the system, that will allow the system to stay fairly healthy in that it could absorb this loss. But also to show you that the education fund is not self-funding, and it takes this amount of money from your general fund to make sure that this fund has the money it needs to meet this need. And if you want to actually raise that tax rate or whatever, it's here for you to take action on the consideration of the name change, as Commissioner Morris did say at one time. Here's an example here in red. Current name is the School for Sci-Tech Fund, and if I just type something down here, or the new name of Stokes County Schools College Fund, whatever the board would elect to call this fund, but you did mention one time that you would like the citizens to know that this is absolutely for the education of our children in this county. Item 6 is your fire districts. You're looking at your service district. Item 7 is King Fire. Item 8 is Rural Hall Fire. And item 9 is the Warren Cove Fire. These are fire taxes that you've got to take action on. You have your BLS service in EMS that was requested that we move forward with taking it over in the county this year, and whether or not the commissioners would like to move forward with that or postponing that to a later date. We can have more discussion on that. The new positions, I have reviewed and went through the original request. The original request was for I believe it was 42, and I cut it down to 17, if I can remember with everything that's going on in the last couple of months. That, these 17s were a legitimate need in these departments, whether the salary study does it or you guys do it. I have went in and cut further. And you can see inside of that, at these new positions, there's all the way down to 4, just 4. And these are 4 areas that is, in my opinion, absolutely needed to relieve the pressure in these areas. And then you've got 5 reclassifications, and these are basically your department heads that are need to be readjusted. Okay. Then you have your equipment, and you see what your equipment are, and we can go over that. And what each individual departments had requested, what I recommended. You know, the BLS, you can see here, the BLS service, that's $286,000, that's 2 ambulances. And you come down and you look at, public buildings, right here is $260,000. This is, placing in, structures for new dwelling, or maintenance shed, and then you look at the cost of demolition of medic, that's in his budget also. In the emergency medical service, you also see the $222,000. This is actually buying a larger ambulance that was keep you on schedule that the board has already approved. And this is the 5th ambulance there that would be replaced.
Just want to check with our commissioners, see if anyone has any questions or comments so far.
I got one, Mr. Chairman. On item 11 and 12, are you giving us a new recommended budget? It's different from your original recommended budget?
Yes, sir. The board requested that I review the business at one of our other board meetings and see if there were, that this would be something that I could trim even further. Now, what was already in there was requested in these areas that are there, the needs there. But here are areas that is highly, that really does need it. And these rate classifications is getting these right here in line.
And also those 2 for the sheriff's thing are to do with the jail.
And yes, in jail.
That
And then you have, your transportation, and, going with your MOE stuff, you mandated non-funded state stuff that, the county would start now, transporting all mental health to the, facility in Winston. They would be responsible for that. But this, yes, to answer your question, has been revised.
We have new sheets for our budget packet with the new recommendations.
But it's not been recommended in her budget yet. Okay. When we go through this right here, and this is what the board wants to do or not do, that's when she will make her adjustment, final adjustment. Instead of having to keep going through and readjusting.
And actually, if you recommend something, doesn't that become part of the recommended budget?
You have a recommended budget and you normally don't recommend another budget during the process.
Well, it's not recommended in a budget, he just tried to go back through and trim down some of those requests as far as the positions that he thought were absolutely needed, just to give you something to look at. Not in any way is that asking you to make a decision just on those, you can certainly still go back through the whole list. like
That's
you're going to do.
that's exactly what we have to do, because we've got a
Right.
recommended budget. To me, this is irrelevant.
Well, I don't know that irrelevant, but like the sheriff's office positions are, you were saying earlier about knowing which ones were for the
Mhm.
jail and had to get done, that's two of those. The position for Julia's been asked for by her auditors a couple of different times, and that human resources assistant was mentioned by Department of Labor as to help get our workers' comp numbers down, so we stopped getting so many fines, violations back from years past, try to get those numbers under control. So that's really all those positions were about.
Okay. Well, I'm just working with the original recommended budget.
Right.
And I'll ask and I'll decide all that stuff based on what was recommended in the initial budget.
If I can, the equipment total, remember that 1.2, there's revenues or financing or stuff that will pay for some of that. And that's at the end of my sheet.
And which one, Julian?
On the capital, the 1,231,930, that's the total to be budgeted, but there's, not all of that is general fund.
Mm-hmm.
Total for item.
When we get on the capital sheet you're talking about?
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's on there at the bottom.
Oh, okay,
At
good,
the
yeah.
end,
That's a
where the
good point.
fundings come from. Yeah, it's just,
You got that highlighted on there, I think you
Yeah.
did. Okay.
it's in yellow.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. Please don't say what else is new.
This is new.
Two of them.
Sorry, I'm just.
That's all right. Not a problem. Now, to me, if the county manager is willing to change his recommendation, then that becomes a new recommended budget. But Julia and Commissioner
Ain't the way
Morris
you
and
do it.
others
Ain't the way you do business.
kind of see it in a different view. I'm looking at it, if I'm working with my budget and I'm seeing not the most current numbers, I'm not completely up to date with where things are with the budget. Because I don't know what
Yeah,
we're
we
to
get one
consider here. Are we to consider the existing recommended budget, or are we to consider the manager's new recommendations?
You go by the original recommended budget. You don't keep recommending new budgets after it's been given to us. It's our job to.
Recommended budget is the published recommended budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we put a budget out for public hearing and everything,
Right.
and that's what we have to work off of. You can't do different iterations of it. You have to have new public hearings, I guess, if you do, which is, that's beside the point. We need to sort out the things he recommended there on our own, because he already made a recommendation to us.
We've had various
I have some
changes
questions.
to the budget as we went through the budget process, and I remember at times, our manager would bring back different iterations. This budget reflects this, and then we would discuss that, but anyway.
That was all working off the base recommended budget though, which is what we need to do to stay legal here.
Okay, let's let Jake proceed with his information. I think we're to item 14.
This is your sixth ambulance that you consider purchasing for UMass. You've got to make a decision on that. If you add that, then you'll be looking at least 6 additional personnel of paramedics. This EMS 2472, you got to make the decision on whether or not you want to go with that for EMS or the scheduled work week. You got your true overtime here. If you elect not to go with the 2472, or if you do elect to go with the 2472, you do have the true overtime pay here. The board needs to elect whether or not they want to go with this or stay with the recommended budget. You got capital needs, and you see your capital needs here, and these capital projects, these will all be financed, and this is the new ambulance station in Walnut Cove, convenience, site for the new, the two, locations of, green box sites. You have your fuel depot that needs to be considered. You got your, solid waste scale house, you have your maintenance shed, you have your sewer, Danbury Water Fund will help pay for that also. Then you have the, total capital project recommended in this is the, 2.545 million. And you have your feasibility study that's in my, recommended budget, for the board to look at on the wellness center. And then you have your high priority water and sewer lines, and you will see page 22 and 23 in the budget in brief. You have your capital reserve, which is in, Julia's side of the budget on page 82. You will see the amounts and what's set aside for that. Also, you will see what is to be added. In addition, this is also some flooring that we're looking at here that we didn't have at the time of the budget being prepared. I don't know if this has, as Commissioner Moore said at one time, it could, just want to know that this would affect the recommended budget. So this was not in the budget, but it was something we was trying to get, and this is replacing the carpet in this building. So that's something that we could, maybe consider later on, or add something that you would, the board would, elect to add to this budget. And you got your contingency, amount of $275,000 set aside for any anticipated any required immediate attention to things that need to be taken care of. And then you have your other funds as far as your, health and Title 19, mental health MOE, regional sewer funds, Stokes Mental Hospital, Danbury, and the 911 funds that you need to consider. And then you have your school current expense, you have your school capital projects that you need to consider, which are on page 79 and page 80 of the, actual budget presented. And then the board needs to consider the, SOO officers that if you do want to place the officers of security of our schools, something that you were interested in doing and have talked about several times. Mr. Chairman, I would think that these are items that have to be approved for this, upcoming budget. And anything that the board would love to change or delete or add to.
Okay. Any discussion on, the information that our managers presented?
I have one question. The new ambulance station in Mexico that we had talked about that was in the Capitol, that would house the 6 ambulance, correct? Is that what we had talked about? Okay,
That's where the 6 ambulance would go.
yeah, okay.
Brandon Gentry said that we want codes for the need for that.
Okay.
Area, that southeastern portion, county area.
Okay. And if I recall from Brandon, when he came up and spoke with us, he said that would be a priority over the basic, right? So if we were looking at that, we'd probably want to look at both of those items. Okay, all right. I was just kind of kicking that around and trying to think how we should work through that. I mean, obviously, we need the structure there to house the ambulance, but I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
I would just add to your comment, I asked him that, a similar question about which, either or, you remember? And he said, 6 ambulance would be his top priority over doing the BLS if he had to choose. And I personally don't think it's a good idea to try to do both of them the same year, change them both the same year. I don't know what we'll decide which way we go, but that's a big change all in one year.
And I concur with that. I will say this, the BLS, the way I look at it right now is we have service in the county. It's not exactly, obviously, I think, well, let me say this, long-term is not what I prefer, but the service is there. It's not as if we do not have the service, whereas that 6th ambulance, I think from everything that I've heard is much needed. So I would agree with that we keep it in place for another year and then look at it in the 2021 budget. So, as Commissioner Walker has often said, unless someone can give me some compelling evidence to suggest otherwise, that's my stance right now.
We did clarify with them too that they will, when their contract ends, they would do that contract based on a month-to-month contract. It wasn't you wanted to revisit in the budget next year, you wouldn't be locked into another year-long, like half of the budget cycle contract. So,
Talking Lifestar would be willing to accept an 18-month contract. It's going to go live in 2022. Give yourself time to build up funds to handle the purchase of two smaller ambulances and equipment as needed. And get yourself ready to take that process back over in the county. But with all the other counties that do it, it shows a revenue source.
Say, if you don't do the BLS, we have to reduce the ambulance fees in the budget, because they reflect the monies we're gonna get from the BLS.
How much do you know off the top of your head? While she's looking that up, I kind of agree with where you're at on that right now too, Commissioner Yachts, of keeping them another year and doing the 6-unit, but until I run some affordability scenarios, that's what I'm hoping won't shock us if we,
We're budgeting $280,000
okay.
for the first year, because it's not a whole year, it's a half a year.
Then we're talking about, like the building and the ambulance all in the same year.
Well, you're not
It's gonna be
combining two ambulances, the
that'd be
two
ugly.
vehicles.
But you're talking about revenue.
I'm talking about revenue.
That's
Yeah.
revenue. The actual cost of that.
Kim,
The cost was
The actual cost
$535,000.
for the EMS BLS services, $286,000. That is the ambulances. The revenue is like $265,000. The projected revenue for BLS service in this county, based on what Lifestar is doing now, is like $580-some thousand a year. Now, if you cut it out, she's gonna have to adjust the 260-some thousand revenue, and then she's gonna adjust the 286,000 for the equipment, and then she's gonna adjust 230,000 for EMT.
So is it a wash?
Pretty much a wash then, it's pretty close.
Yes.
For this coming budget
Well,
year?
the county would projected revenues from the financing for the two
That's right, they're financed, so
transports.
that's not
He's
all.
gonna finance it. 25,505 was always gonna pay from general fund for
Oh,
half a
okay.
year.
Yeah, so it's not quite as friendly as we hoped.
And then the next year would pay,
Okay.
it should pay part of the debt plus the cost of units.
I think those are the main two. I wanna run 2 or 3 budget scenarios and get y'all to check what they cost, but put that ambulance in that building in, an additional ambulance in the building, and then if you add something to the school, say for instance, keep them even, that 600 and something thousand, if you did at least that and maybe more, and then look at the other things like, if you do a water sewer project, we're not gonna be doing much spending on that till next year. We're gonna be working on grants all year, so even if we approve it, so. I'm anxious to kind of put a few of those little scenarios together and see how much it costs. And then I can start really giving you more firm positions on
See, no,
a more
building
firm
it.
position on these individual items.
Building and legislation, we was gonna finance that.
Mhm.
So what would that do for our numbers?
Excuse me?
What would financing do for our numbers?
I'd have to look at it, I haven't run those figures or anything.
What time period would we generally look at for that type of financing?
Well, the land, is the land available?
For the ambulance station, well, that land is free, it's being donated.
Okay, but what about the building, if we finance it, what would the debt service per year be?
I haven't run the numbers to see what the debt payments would be yet.
Excuse me, a lot less than 650 then.
Yeah, just the fact that we're financing makes it easier, but it's still, it may not be easy enough.
Yeah,
And,
you still gotta fill out an LGC application because you're building a building.
So how much
You
debt,
can't just do that.
what have we got, 40, 50 million, $60 million borrowed?
Yeah, right now.
Okay. And then you are paying, right now, you're currently paying what, 5 million or something a year of debt service? So that, to get up just a rough estimate,
Right.
if you took the 60 million divided by 5 million,
No,
or 5 million divided by 60 million borrowed, then you'd get approximately an estimate of what, 650,000.
well, our debt service, Julia, we, at times, having something come to fruition, it runs its term, and it drops off our debt. You track that, I believe, when this debt's coming off and when that
Yeah.
debt's coming off. My
We've got
question
some
is,
debts
as I
coming
listen
off.
to Commissioner Morris and others, is by financing this, could we put ourselves into a positive cash flow situation pretty quickly, like next year? If we went ahead and, well, I'm mixing things up here, I guess. I'm trying to look at a way to do both and still not have an overly heavy impact on our budget. 6th ambulance and get set up to do the BLS service.
The building on the ambulance needs to be separate from the BLS because
Right, understand.
you got to get plans, you got to get permits and all this stuff for LGC to prove it.
Right.
So that's gonna take, you're gonna have to hire an architect and all that.
Yeah,
Even
I
though if we do a
understand.
building like we did in Pinnacle, which was it was a, metal, one in a metal facility and it's got brick on the outside of it, which is what
And it's very
Brandon's looking
functional.
at, is that kind of facility like over there.
It's doing the job pretty well, actually. The reason I mentioned those together is the 6th ambulance is not going to produce that much revenue. It's a debt that we have to start paying toward. But the BLS is going to produce revenue. And what I'm looking at, both have impact on the total budget. So will the BLS, by financing the 286, and I know we still have the personnel, which is a significant cost, but will it produce enough revenue to help offset the expense of I think Commissioner Yance mentioned something about a wash possibly? I don't know
I
whether
think that
that's
we had
what you
actually,
were.
I think we had determined that after about 4 or 5 years, you would be, because if I remember the conversation, I had actually ran the numbers. And I was saying we would be about 250 to 280,000 positive after 4 or 5 years. And one of you brought up the fact that, yeah, by then would be time to probably buy another ambulance too. So it would pretty much be a wash, to your point.
Well, I don't guess it'll ever be a large revenue producer, even though we do take it back. And like Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Yance were saying earlier, if we don't do it, there's not a lot of impact because it's working pretty well the way it is. So we can kind of bide our time on the BLS service if we choose to. But But if it were going to be a significant revenue producer, we need revenues. And so if it were going to be a significant revenue producer, my thoughts would be more toward the sooner we can get started, the better. But I'm like, probably the rest of you, I just wanna think about this a little more and see some more information and kind of figure out what's best to do here.
Just remember when Brandon was here, you know, we're losing revenues to Rockingham, Forsyth running
We
our
are.
calls too, so.
We are. And he gave us
I
the
mean,
numbers
pay
for
a whole
those
lot
calls.
on it, but still we're losing revenue because they're having to run our calls.
Have some,
Just look at the chart that he gave you.
Mhm.
If you look at the chart, it shows you how many times they were absent, that they haven't wanted anyone covering certain areas because the ambulance was inside county, wherever running the call.
Right.
Or doing the delivery. They would have Rockingham, Forsyth, or Surrey County just sit, have an ambulance sitting in certain locations. Now, sitting there don't mean it just costing you any money. It's not costing you anything. You have to look at how many times they had to make that actual trip for you. And if you look at that, it's not that much.
What is costing us is, what Julia mentioned, we're not getting the revenues from calls that we could be getting if we had an ambulance available. But maybe we can add this to our list of to be discussed. We can pick it up when we start going through some of these other items.
I have concerns about having that many EMS people at one time when we can't hardly keep the ones we got filled.
True.
For two different new purposes. That's, I don't know if they're available or not, whenever, until our pay study gets done. And attract them easier.
And talking with Brandon, it's not a problem on EMTs, but if you do an ambulance where you need three paramedics, that's where your problem's at.
They're just not turning them out as quickly as to fill the need for them. And I go back one or two directors, Greg, Monty, that's been a consistent ongoing issue for EMS for years and years. They're just not turning out enough paramedics. And the ones that come through school and are qualified, there's options for them to choose from, some more lucrative than Stokes County. But I think we provide a good work environment, we provide good equipment, so we do get enough to make our operation work. Other thoughts or comments regarding, information presented with item 4? Jake, you head over to the right-hand side there, no or yes?
Well, it's giving you an opportunity for you to vote on these items. Whether you feel like you're in support of it or not.
I'd be interested in our commissioners' thoughts regarding, how they feel about answering no or yes at this time. Are you in a position where you feel like you can, or need a little more time to think about it, or
I need more information from.
more information, or where are we?
Yeah, I wouldn't be willing to yet, but, I mean, again, I'm a numbers guy, and again, the new positions, when you look at, 17 versus 4, however you wanna shake it out, and I look at this as a recommendation from you, not as a budget, but anyway, if you look at that and average it out, the original for 17 positions was a total cost of $723,549. If you divide that by 17, multiply it by 4, puts you at $170,246 for a total savings of $553,000 on new positions. When you look at the reclass and the increases, $185,269 was the original. When we go with these 5, it puts you at a cost of $28,948 for a savings of $156,000. So between those two, that's a $709,000 savings as a recommendation. So when we're talking about a 2% versus a 4% COLA, a a 2% COLA was $303,000. If you add another 2% to it, unless my math's way off, I mean, that's roughly another $303,000, right?
Best time figure.
I mean, so we're still at a positive 400,000, and I'm just saying, if we went to this recommendation, I'm talking on personnel. That puts you positive 400,000 to the original recommended budget. Something to kind of think about.
Good observation. Thanks for sharing it. Other thoughts, comments?
I'd already done the numbers, so I had the same thing.
Yeah, and I just took it as an average.
Yeah.
That number will probably change a little bit, but.
It's just something where we, that I'll do together to help come to a conclusion on how the 2019-20 budget. Am I right? So it's mainly, it's totally up to what this board is getting at. But you can change, delete, remove, add to. You always have before, and you always will in the future. In budgets. Yes, I do have a recommended budget, and that's there, so what you see right here is a change that you can make in the, as far as the staff is concerned, reclassifications and the staff, change that the board can make to the recommended budget. And it's just designed to help, it might not be the actual, well, it needs to be on it, but hopefully we can help this board come to, approving a new budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And, you know, and I've got, on the staff here, on some scenarios of what the board can consider as far as you pass it out. Of what is determined, what's in the actual, we just read over. And,
Thanks, sir.
and we can discuss much further with that and need. And hopefully we can help the board come to a conclusion of what they want to do with the actual personnel. In the actual COLA or the new personnel or the reclassifications. If it's needed now, the board may say we're going to allow the salary study to handle all new personnel and reclassifications, which I would absolutely understand because it is. They're the professionals, they're the ones that's looking at this. They're the ones that's analyzing it, and they're the ones that's going to tell you what's needed and what's not. And we may want, like you already discussing, just sticking with a COLA, and increasing pay now, and be a part of it, taking a jump on what the actual sales that we may do. But if you look at what your surrounding counties are doing, and it does look like it's a considerable amount that would have to be increased.
We were-
Commissioner Morris just said when he pointed out the libraries, theirs is what, 28%?
We weren't that out of line with some counties, but others were getting out ahead of us. I think 2 out of the 5 or 6 did 24.72. And others, I don't think we were that far away from some of the other counties. Jake, on this adding 6 truck, 6 paramedic positions, I think Brandon said he's running 1 EMT and 1 paramedic.
Yeah, but we budget them all as paramedics, because we don't know what their certifications are gonna be when they're hired.
And he only
even though we may
So,
they may not be an EMT, if they go get their paramedic, then they move up sometime during the year, the money's there.
You can see here for us, where I've got the recommendation of new position. If the board elects to move with the UAMLS, then you see where I've took the BLS out and then changed, a lot of recommendations here on the absolute need and the actual need. And you're coming up with, four personnel, which now is $175,000 based on what their costs were at the budget. The actual cost for the salary plus benefits. And then you've got your reclassifications, and these reclassifications are basically your department heads that I had mentioned. Plus, our veteran service kept moving, from 3 days a week to 4 days, and you know you want to pay the man if you can work 4 days, additional hour, day. And then you're looking at, the natural resource, supervisor, and so on, water, that would be someone taking on, the responsibilities of some, working there anymore as a supervisor, that would be more than stepping down and someone taking that responsibility. Other than that, this is for the board to look at and adjust the way that they see it best benefit the county.
How did you, if I may ask, please, Jake, how did you, arrive at these specific amounts for the reclassification?
Reclassification,
Yes, sir.
I looked at some of the surrounding counties, and I looked at, what we should be at. You know, if you take one of the directors, you take a director that's in, let's take Julia's position for an example.
Mm-hmm.
Surrey County, Summit County, Rockingham, Davie County. If you look at, Rockingham County, if you look at it, she's about, 2-3 grades below what they are at.
Did you take into account the size of the county's budget and that certain counties, Surrey and Rockingham and certain others are in a better position to pay higher salaries than we are? And I'm not talking about Julia's salary specifically, I'm just talking generically. When you compared us to other counties, did you, take size of the county, those type things into account?
You absolutely take that into consideration. Now, when I, in what I looked at, it was basically how they're associated with them, what our pay grade is, if it's an overall average of someone being on a grade level 70, for an example, then and if we have someone at 68, then our 70 is based on what we pay here, not what they're paying. So
Right.
that's what I would think is the grade level that we should be at. So, naturally, our 70 at what pay grade we have is much different from what site county would do, if it would be the same. But again, I'm not a professional like what Commissioner Moore said. If you want it done in a manner to where you can absolutely trust this, then you need to just not do anything and allow those salaries and people to do it for you.
That's kind of where I'm looking. Again, I'm keeping an open mind at this point, trying to
And then you've got
do a lot of
companies that-
processing, do a lot of information gathering, and be equipped to make the best decision, hopefully, when the time comes. But I'm just kind of looking at various aspects of the information we're dealing with here today. We're getting down to where it counts in some ways. We're starting to make some real progress with the budget. We're getting more thoughts and data out to work with. Appreciate you pulling this together.
That's what we-
But when you add some of the increases and 4% and longevity, and it's gonna have some effect on our budget.
Something that you gotta consider, what's best for your staff, for the employees, what's best for the county and the taxpayers and our citizens. And that's a tough job, and y'all have to, do this to the best of your ability. And Julia and Shannon and myself are here to help you accomplish this, no matter what the outcome is gonna be. We help you accomplish the best possible scenario that can happen in our budget.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that I think this has probably been the most beneficial day so far, because we have accomplished quite a bit, as you said. I think we made a pretty good dent today, even though that we still have a lot of numbers to run and things, but at least we got everybody's, well, Commissioner Morris pretty much knocked mine and Jamie's list down before it got to us, but, you know, I thought today's session was a very
We're getting
positive
some
session.
traction.
Yeah, I did.
I thought Commissioner Morris had a good list. He's obviously put some thought and work into it. I added some items, Commissioner Yance added some items. If you total all of them up, 29, and probably another at least half dozen, so we got 30-some items that we've talked about at least in some way or the other, and had some shared opinions on them, and I think we have made some progress. We've still got work to do though, and not all that much time left to do it in. That's what's gonna bring us to our final item when we're ready for it. But, any cleanup we need to do, any, by-the-ways, or?
And one question, do y'all remember if the RFP had looking at new positions in it for the salary study? I don't remember it being in there.
It states in the scope of work that, I can pull it up and read it exactly, but it states in there to look at the job descriptions and establish if positions are needed or something. It states something like that in the scope of work.
That new positions
Where
are
it says,
needed?
if additional positions or something, I
Okay.
may have it on this computer, I can't remember. Pull it up and look
I
at it.
I didn't remember that being in there. I thought it was just classifications.
I think we framed it all along, Commissioner Morris, if my memory's correct. I might have the worst memory of any right now. I'm still, I think, recovering. But, we framed this as a compensation, salary, and staffing study. So hopefully that carried through with our providers, with our vendors, that they will be looking at salary and staffing. If we had to change it, I guess that would be pretty involved. Some,
You can modify the contract.
sir,
You can modify the contract.
that's what I was thinking.
I don't remember other salary studies I've read recommending, from these guys recommending deleting or adding positions, but it may have been in there, so. It kind of, impacts what we talk about here as part of our budget, whether it's in there or not a little bit, so.
Oh, Shannon is looking that up.
You don't have to look it up now, we can talk about it tomorrow.
Anyone else have any,
Check it out for tomorrow.
thoughts they need to share at this time, or questions? Any information from our staff that you feel like would be beneficial in future budget meetings?
Sure, tomorrow I'd like to go through all of my budget sheets. I've got probably 15 or 20 in here, 10 maybe, that I have questions. And then go through the equipment list and the personnel list and look at all the things that were recommended on both those lists. But I think Andy needs to be here when we do that.
That would be good if he were here.
And maybe not do it if he's not here tomorrow.
Commissioner Morris, regarding what you just referenced, is there anything in particular that Jake, Shannon, Julia, or anyone needs to try to have available for you when we discuss these items?
I don't think so, not now, until we can go through them.
So you go through them and say yay or nay on some of it. I
Right.
can't, run a synopsis.
Okay,
I mean, I can run as many budgets if we want to, but until I know what to take out or put in and change, it's hard to do. Now, Now, I had the schools because we didn't have the budget at the time, but that's the only ones I've adjusted from the recommended. And that was just a suggestion for y'all, and if you need me to make copies of those sheets again, I can.
For what now?
You know where I handed out the other night the sheet for the school current expense and
Mhm.
capital outlay?
I got all that.
Okay.
I'm just looking for the salary, so just looking at this one line that states that based on study determined if changes to position job descriptions are needed, and just say they're gonna create the new job position descriptions. Trying to look through and see, I'll read it a little more clear and just make sure we see it, but I guess if it doesn't clearly say in there that we want them to look, like say if there's jobs that are lumped into 2 or 3 different jobs comparably, to separate those out or create new positions like that, Department of Labor thing we were talking about with that position, they suggested some counties were doing, for them specific, I might even still have time to send out and ask them if you need to include that in the proposals or change a little something to that, to make sure it's clear in there.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we need them to do it, or is that something we can do ourselves, which I think may be the latter.
Yeah,
I mean, as far as adding new positions or not, I mean, we can,
Some of them are automatics, they depend on the decision we make, basic decision, like if we had a 6th unit for EMS, that's gonna create
yeah,
7
exactly,
jobs.
exactly, that's what I'm saying.
And,
You make my point, exactly.
And then I'll listen to the department head come and talk to me concerning why they need an additional help in their department.
right,
And when I listen to them, all of them, they put up a good argument,
sure,
but some of you can tell that they are really in need of having more bodies down there to take care of the demand that they're under.
right.
Because
We-
can't get the work done.
We have, for years, for a long time, been recognized as a county with a lean staff. Right, Julia?
I agree.
I mean, we're kind of known in the area for that, really, I guess. Jake, how about the jail?
Jail,
Yes, sir.
your jail's ready to go.
You do know that we got our first aid today from Wilkes County.
First inmate,
8.
8,
From Wilkes.
okay. So they're starting to flow in this
State
direction.
authorized it to be operational.
Very good. So that starts having a budget impact from now on.
Needs to.
And I'm sure that Sheriff Mike will start bringing our inmates back as quick as possible. That ought to be in-house.
And that'll be a savings in your budget too.
Oh, yeah.
Us taking care of our own.
That right there would probably make a payment.
That would be nice. Well, gentlemen, the only item that I have remaining is the one that Commissioner Morris requested, and that's dates for future meetings. I know we have one tomorrow. Shannon, when's the next, there's one on the 11th, isn't
The only
there?
thing you have is tomorrow at 4, and then you have the June 11th one at 6, which is another meeting with the Board of Education with the sheriff here.
Right?
And that's the last actual scheduled budget meeting that we have set aside.
And that would be open and closed session stuff,
Yes.
both, right?
Mhm. Yep.
I would like for the board to consider June the 20th as a date that they are actually approving this budget, and then that will allow you to have the following commissioners meeting to adopt the,
Budget ordinance? Mhm.
that will be on the 24th.
And that gives us 4 days to.
Another sort of,
Yeah, I gotta have a couple of days
to do her thing.
to change figures.
So having that date in mind, you have to look at dates in between, so.
That's really pushing Julie to get this ordinance done in one day, and then she would probably have to work over the weekend.
Well, if we're gonna change a lot on that salary stuff, that's gonna take me a while to calculate all that.
And I would like one item added to our budget, when it's approved, and that is other changes as recommended by Commissioner Walker.
No.
Now, one commissioner did
I know
that.
that, no. I mean, that's not my decision, but,
I don't think my peers will go along with that.
no.
Matter of fact,
They weren't here when.
matter of fact, if I caught some glimpses out of the corner of my eye, there were some eyes being rolled at me. No, that's about all I have. Anyone else have anything that they'd like
And
to
you have a- and you have a
suggest
regular
as far as
meeting.
dates?
So that's,
I can-
June 20th?
Yeah, but are you
we're talking
wanting
about that
work
being the day
session?
for, yeah. the
That's
work
a wrap
sessions-
up, suggested as the wrap-up meeting,
Mhm.
to have it hopefully finished by that date. Commissioner Yost, when are you gonna be out of town? You said you had some
That
vacation.
week.
Oh,
Yeah.
Which, that's what I was gonna ask. Can I, has it been, past practice to Skype in to a meeting?
You can certainly, yeah, we can certainly do that. The only things that Ty ever warns about that is if you're a deciding vote on something, it's a little bit tricky, but with budget, it may work a little different for him. I have to ask him, but he, he doesn't want it to ever be like a 2-2 vote and the person that's Skyped in or, calling in is the deciding vote
Right,
on something. So,
It
who do you-
technically could be 2-2 on the budget.
I'll be out the 15th through the 22nd.
So then you have the 12th, 13th, if you want Commissioner Yost here. So maybe after you get done with the Board of Education on the 11th, maybe you could meet on the 13th, finalize it.
Do we feel like we need another day besides tomorrow?
We will, more than likely.
Well, no, I'm not saying finalize it tomorrow. I'm
Oh,
talking
about
about
a work
another-
session.
Yeah.
I mean, unless
Yeah.
they have till the 30th.
Don't push it that way, just, I mean, I don't,
I have another question to ask you folks while you think about dates. This is, I know what the answer is most likely to be. This is supposed to be a very short, or a short, planning meeting. Any interest in recessing this meeting till after the planning board meeting, or we had about enough for today?
With Andy not being here, it's a problem, I think.
It is.
If Andy were here.
It's not an ideal situation, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
I'd rather go through the rest of my discussion and my questions with him here if I can on the equipment and the personnel and the other few things. I mean, it would be better.
yeah, but as far as after tomorrow, I
Right.
think the 6th, even the 7th, I mean, it's a Friday, obviously, but the 10th, we have the meeting on.
All right, let's kind of jot down the dates that Commissioner Yance is suggesting. That was the 6th.
So tomorrow we could recess to.
Yeah,
another
recess
day.
a number of
Yeah.
times if it's needed.
So the 6th is on a Thursday.
I'll do the 6th.
Has tomorrow been advertised as a meeting
It has not put that one in the paper, but you can certainly recess tomorrow into the 6th.
and for future meetings?
Right, exactly. But I just went ahead and advertised that one because we knew we were gonna have to have it, so it's in there.
Okay.
What-
6th,
And
Thursday, I can't do it early, I can't do it at 3 or 4. It would have to be
6th,
at 6
what
o'clock.
time on the 6th?
it's 6,
It
okay.
would have to be 6 for me.
6 p.m.
6
On
o'clock?
Thursday. Now, that's just me, again.
Uh,
Well, but, yeah,
All
Except
right,
for the dates I've got locked in out of town, I'm gonna do whatever dates you can do.
all right.
I'll just change anything else I have
And
to.
if the 10th works better for everyone else, well, we've got,
got a regular meeting, yeah.
School
And then the
board.
11th is your school board.
What
And there's
time
the
are we,
12th.
what time are we meeting with the school board?
6 on the 11th.
See, tomorrow's the 5th, right? And that's
Yeah,
Wednesday. 6th is Thursday, and we can meet at 6 o'clock on the 6th.
then
Is that Norris graduation? Is it-
Oh, has anybody?
Okay,
Well,
probably,
it's just a
Norris
budget meeting.
graduation.
Keep our public hearings away.
It's
Is
Friday
anybody-
night sale.
I can't do the next two Fridays, I'm out of town on those two.
I
Does
can
that
do it.
graduation make a conflict for anybody on the 6th? Okay.
That does make,
Does you?
the graduation,
Uh-huh.
that's North, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, It's tough for me to miss that one.
What time is the
Principal 7
graduation?
years there.
What time is the
I
graduation?
think your graduation's at 7, I'm pretty sure. Graduation's at 7, is that right?
So how about the 13th?
So, Commissioner Yachts, did you say 6 o'clock on the 6th would be your earliest?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I'll do the
That would,
13th.
I'm gonna mark through the 6th then, right?
Yeah, how about the 13th?
13th?
You can't do the sixth.
Well,
I can.
Oh,
graduation.
you can't do the sixth, okay.
Yeah.
I can do the 13th.
I can too.
What times?
Anytime, I'm clean on the 13th.
All day, anytime. All right, I'll put that as open. And then we gotta get Andy's input too, remember, so.
The 13th afternoon is better for me as well.
Okay,
Thursdays.
anyone else, others agree with afternoon?
Like 6 o'clock time frame on
That's-
the 13th?
It's 6 o'clock.
Yeah. I mean, I could get here as early as probably 5, but that's about it.
I have to take somebody out of town that day, so after, for me, if you want, I mean, if anybody else wants to try to do cameras and stuff, but I can be back before 6, but
Okay.
I've gotta take somebody for a medical procedure that day.
Are we saying 6 o'clock on the 13th?
Okay.
Trust me, we want you here.
Shannon, did you make a note of,
Cut
did
down
you
Christmas, let's go.
plug that in,
So
6
are we
o'clock
doing
on the 13th?
13, 6.
Are we doing the 6th or no?
The 6th is gonna be
6
the
is
day of
off.
graduation.
6 is
Yeah,
I know the 7th is a Friday, but, I mean,
I'm going Friday and
You're going
7th and
this-
14th, both, yeah.
you're out of here, okay, 7th and 14th, okay.
And I want to go to South
So that
Stretch.
puts us,
If it's
And
not
then-
raining.
Then the 17th and 18th, is that the next days?
Days.
That's Monday and Tuesday. and
but then you're not here those days.
I won't be here that week.
Oh, you're gone
He's
that
gone the
week?
whole week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is
as
it
far
green?
as the final budget, if you guys wanted to keep it on the 20th or whatever, I mean, that's,
Well, I mean,
Has to be done by the 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
Is finalizing it on the 24th too late for you, Julia?
well, that's, if you finalize it on the, before then, we can do the budget ordinance at the meeting on the 24th, otherwise you have to do another,
If you finalized it on the 13th, Julia would be tickled to death.
that'll
I
give
bet
you a
you
week.
would. I bet you would be real good.
But I mean, it's whatever the board wants.
Also, did somebody say that the 12th was out for a, or that's a Wednesday, or?
I can do the 12th.
I can do the 12th.
Not good for you.
I can't do the 12th.
Okay.
I have, yeah, I have.
So what we've got right now then is a regular meeting on the 10th, meet with the Board of Education on the 11th, and have a budget meeting on the 13th. Is that what we've got set?
Which still doesn't really give you a lot of other just time to work on, besides tomorrow.
We got tomorrow.
And then the 13th, other than the 11th meeting.
so the only one that we've actually plugged in is the 13th at 6 o'clock.
After tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow's
Tomorrow's
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have the 11th meeting.
The 10th is a regular.
What time is the meeting on the 11th?
6.
We could actually, if we needed to, and if the other commissioner schedules would allow, we could start our meeting prior to that.
It's been advertised.
Yeah,
Well, the way we would could do that is at the meeting tomorrow, we recess that meeting till a time just prior to the other meeting. And then at the end of the time that we are at the end of our recess meeting, then we go straight into the other meeting.
right. So what time, the other meeting starts at 6, so what time, I know you're gonna be on vacation next week, so you can't miss a lot of time away from work that week either.
Yeah,
So-
you just tell me a time and I'll try to make it.
3 o'clock? Just tossing out a number.
Yeah, I mean, I can't promise anything on that day, but I'll do what I can.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's tentatively pencil in 3 o'clock on the 11th. And we gotta have Andy's input too, so these are all tentative dates.
So you're speaking of just recessing tomorrow to the 11th?
That would be my suggestion, and give us a little more time to work with, and try to get as much wrapped up as possible, so Commissioner Yance can be a part of the process.
You know, another thing we can do is, as far as working our individual scenarios, we can do that with the county staff in between the meetings, and then bring the, bring stuff to the meetings kind of ready to go, ready to do some reconciliation, and not try to do it all.
You're talking about like you would personally call the staff,
Mhm.
we'll go talk to them.
Yeah, just call you or Julie or whoever I need, and
Please do so.
That's kind of an existing condition anyway, I believe. Anyone
I
has
mean, it
any
may be more
questions?
important this
or-
year. It may be important, if we're getting squeezed here, it may be
We're
important to
starting
do that.
We really are starting to get somewhat squeezed as far as getting this finished.
Yeah. I think after tomorrow, I'll be ready to put my scenarios together.
Yeah, as long as everybody can be here tomorrow, depending on what, hopefully Amy's family situation,
Right.
be here tomorrow. We start pretty earlier tomorrow, so just go wild tomorrow.
And did everyone pencil in possibly meeting prior to the meeting on the 11th?
Yes, at 3.
Yeah,
Put down 3.
3.
I got that.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Shannon. We could meet longer tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, once we start, I mean, if nobody has to be anywhere tomorrow evening,
Yeah.
I mean, you're starting at 4, so we can take a break, eat something, start again, be here a while tomorrow.
I don't have to.
Just
Okay,
for,
scheduled to 10 o'clock.
just for reference's sake,
Well, there you go.
I recall working on a budget in King when I was on that board until 2 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, well,
when we
I'd
got
rather
caught
be
in
here
a
longer.
situation where we needed to get it done.
Amen.
Yeah, I had to.
They hammer it out tomorrow.
And really, if you think of something between now and like tomorrow, that I've got a list and all that, but if anything specifically that you'd like to know that we didn't get to today, or more information, shoot me a text or email or something, we can try to go ahead and have that to you, help answer questions before.
Well, unless there's other business for the board's consideration, does anyone have a motion that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Let's eat. We'll consider Commissioner Yance's invocation for our meeting also a blessing for our food. How's that work?
Sounds good to me.